Good evening. Happy Sunday. Welcome to the Sunday Pub. If you don't know what this is, if this is your first time here, this is a casual and friendly bookish people hangout, which I do every Sunday. And anybody who wants to is welcome to join me on screen. And that is sometimes nobody and sometimes 8 people and anything in between. This week, I finished an awesome trilogy. What are you reading? How has your week been? How is everything going? Hello, Osa. Osa's here. Evie's here in chat, but she is a little bit sick still. So best wishes for Evie to feel happy and healthy again as soon as possible. Alicia's here. Hi. The regular crew, all we need now is a Thornall, and maybe a Colton, and maybe a Daniel. John's here. Hi, John. How was everybody's week? How is your reading going? I just finished the Awesomest trilogy. It was so good. Yep, and there's Thornall, of course. And Mac. I just finished the Final Architecture trilogy by Adrian Tchaikovsky, and it was so good. Colton's also here. Very good. I've got to say, my big highlight this week was, I've never done this before in Restream, so I need to check out how it actually works. Okay. I see what I need to do. I need to open these in another app, and then I can share them. The coolest thing I did this week was I got to meet Adrian Tchaikovsky. He was doing an event in Berlin, and because of that, I got to meet him. Well, because of that, and I had also been writing sort of at him, and we had been writing back and forth on Blue Sky. He doesn't use Twitter. I don't really much either anymore. We'd been writing a bit about various nerdy topics there. So when I knew he was going to be in Berlin, I wrote him and said, hey, if you have free time and are looking for something to do, let's have a beer. So the two of us went out and had a beer the night before his event. And then there was his event, which was in this amazing old water tower, where he did a reading from the opening of now I'm blanking on the name, City of Last Chances. And then this guy, Wolf, who is a dude who works for the Otherland bookstore in Berlin, which is an awesome sci-fi fantasy bookstore. He sort of interviewed him, and there were questions with the audience. And then, because I had already met him, I luckily got to go to dinner with him and the Otherland crew, and we helped him sign books. This is Wolf from Otherland and Caro from Otherland and Adrian and me. And I was packing his books into a box while he was signing them. He signed, I don't know, 200 or something books for the bookstore. So that was the highlight of my week. How is everybody else's week? Especially, for example, Britain's week.
No.
How's your week been, Britain?
It went by pretty fast, actually.
Yeah.
Halloween is upon us, so I'm going to be reading horror all month, so that's always fun. But sounds like you had a fun week, Matt.
I had a very cool week. Overall, the week was just another week, but Monday and Tuesday at the beginning of the week were pretty awesome. Yeah, awesomer than usual, I can say. Colton has finished House of Chains, one of the books of the Malazan Book of the Fallen, which is why he is screaming witness at us. If you've read the book, you know.
Well, I am starting Gardens of the Moon at least next year, so I will know what you're talking about soon.
It's about damn time.
Yeah.
Yep. Everybody should read Malazan. Maybe not everybody. It's definitely, like any book, it's definitely not for everybody, but it's for a lot of people.
Yes,
and it's
but
really,
Halloween
really good.
is the whole month. Horror, baby.
Yeah, I don't know. I was thinking I don't really go in for horror that much, but I was thinking I might read or reread Something Wicked This Way Comes this month.
That's a good choice for Halloween. I was actually thinking of doing the same this year, but
Yeah.
I just it didn't come together, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's not. I wouldn't call it full-on horror, but it's definitely creepy, and it's got some extremely creepy scenes in it. So
there's an evil circus in it, so that's always fun.
Carnival, yeah.
Carnival, yeah.
Basically, yes. Yeah. What else have we got? Rogue is reading Stone of Farewell. That's interesting. I got up to the first book of 2 Green Angel Tower, and I kind of stalled, or at least I wasn't in the mood for Tad Williams anymore, because Tad Williams can be kind of slow and things build up and, it takes a while and all of that, which is why actually I switched to Tchaikovsky and The Final Architecture. And that turned out to be a really good idea, because I flew through those 3 books in like a couple weeks.
Tchaikovsky's another guy I need to get to. I know. I'm a bad.
Well, worth it. He writes some good stuff. And look who it is. It's Raph.
Oh boy, it's the man. It's the legend. It's the Matt's Pub crew back together.
Exactly.
Hello. How is everyone? I'm just popping in between stuff.
Oh, okay.
I came back from a festival today, and I'll be boarding a Flixbus to Berlin at 1:15 a.m. to be in Berlin at 7 in the morning to take another Flixbus to go to Łódź in Poland.
Oh, okay. I was going to say you're coming to Berlin, and you didn't tell me, but you're not really coming to Berlin.
Just for 2 hours, and I assumed you have better things to do than to meet me at Berlin bus terminal at like 7 in the morning.
I have much better things to do than almost anything at 7 in the morning. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Namely,
including sleep.
No, sleep is the top of the list, and everything else is pretty much not on the list at all.
I'm pretty sure Fitz is against you sleeping at 7 in the morning.
We've sort of reached an accommodation.
Oh, that's good.
I've trained her to eat dinner quite late, like at 10 in the evening.
I remember you complaining about her being Like
yeah, exactly.
very
That
much
was right
into
at the beginning.
waking up at like
That was
6 or
right at
something.
the beginning. At the beginning, she decided breakfast time was 5 in the morning, and I decided to kick her off the bed numerous times.
Yeah.
Instead of getting up at 5 in the morning. But we've sort of settled now with dinner at 10 in the evening, and she wakes me up at about 9, which is fine with me. So that actually works pretty well. What else we got? So Rogue is reading Stone of Farewell.
I just finished Polostan 5 minutes ago.
Polistan.
Polostan is the new Neil Stevenson novel that came out for like I think for the UK and Europe like on Thursday,
Oh,
and
okay.
I guess the US will have to wait until next month or like
All right.
the end of the month or something.
And it was good.
Yes and no. It was very Neil Stevenson, which works really well for me, but it has a very specific issue. It's a historical novel, and it's like incredibly short for a Neil Stevenson novel, by which I mean it's like 400 something pages, which is way less than his usual like stuff.
Yeah.
And if you don't know a lot of like the historical context of what he's talking about, it can get like very interesting. It's mostly set in like the 1930s in both Russia and well, the Soviet Union and the US, and yeah, it doesn't have a lot of context. And I find it interesting from that perspective as someone who has, I mean, never thought about it too much when like reading historical fictions, like how much you can actually sort of like change and influence perception by just leaving out stuff. And it's an interesting case study in that regard, I think.
Yeah, I'm mixed on Neil Stevenson. I mean, I started reading Neil Stevenson when he started writing. So I read a lot of his very early things like Diamond Age and
Snow Crash.
Snow Crash. And then all of a sudden he was bringing out books that were intellectually extremely challenging for me.
Yeah.
After Snow Crash, basically.
Yeah,
And
Cryptonomicon is a bit of like a...
I tried Cryptonomicon and I was like, I understand he's doing some intelligent things here, but it feels a little bit masturbatory on his
Neil Stevenson has
part.
always been incredibly masturbatory. It's very much it's kind of why I like it. It's the kind of book that makes me feel smart while reading it, and then I hate myself for feeling smart while reading it and enjoying it anyways.
It made
you covered
me
Snow
feel...
Crash recently, didn't you?
I did make a video on Snow Crash recently.
Isn't that
Yes,
smart in comparison.
I did make a video on Snow Crash recently because I wanted to talk about Scissors Cut Paper Wrap Stone by Ian MacDonald, and that one does, on the one hand, have like a Neil Stevenson blurb on the cover, on the original cover, but it's also very similar in some themes to Snow Crash, and I felt that we're talking about the book that no one has read, or maybe two people have read, it would be helpful to also have sort of like the Snow Crash thing out so people can see. Yeah, so I can like reference stuff and you know, at least give people a chance to actually know what I mean when I talk about Snow Crash and in specific.
Fair enough. I'm going to go through the comments a little bit. Mattia is in love with Pillars of the Earth. Osa is busy, so is still reading The Will to Battle and Black Veil, which apparently are both awesome. John is reading The Oceans of Cruelty, 25 Tales of a Corpse Spirit. Interesting.
Thornall, the answer is you start with Black Company.
I haven't gotten to that question yet, so I don't know what you're talking about, but I'll get there in a minute. Mitch is, as usual, trolling everyone. He's playing Last of Us 2 instead of reading. Says it's better than reading. I don't know. I played Last of Us 1, and I really liked it. And there was such a mixed reaction to the second one that I was staying away from it to start with, but I may go back to it now. Clara, hello. Alicia is in chapter 4. I forget what she's in chapter 4 of. Oh, Les Mis. Les Miserables. Okay.
I did put in a joke from the musical to see if Alicia would get it, but she didn't take the bait, so I'm saying... Of
course, everyone gets that. I could even sing it. I won't, but I could.
Or at least if she did, I didn't see it. So sorry.
Colton wants to chill with Adrian and ask him questions about Children of Time. Yeah, he had a lot of interesting things to say. I mean, because we were kind of hanging out a bit longer and it wasn't just a sort of quick chat after a signing. I mean, we went out to dinner twice. I was trying not to. I mean, I always find it interesting when you meet someone who is a celebrity, or at least for you in some way is kind of a celebrity.
Mhm.
Like, he's not Brad Pitt or anything, but you know, he's a name, and how to behave with them. And I was very self-conscious of it the whole time.
Yeah.
And I was kind of consciously trying to talk to him
Bit
like a
too
human
long.
and not like an author, you know? Like just asking him about stuff he's interested in, or, you know, what he does with his time, and not only his books. But I did talk to
Okay,
him
that makes sense.
a fair bit about his books.
Sorry,
Ida.
who are you talking about? I completely
Adrian
blanked.
Tchaikovsky.
Adrian
I
Tchaikovsky.
met him in Berlin earlier this
Oh.
week.
Nice.
And because we had been interacting online already before that,
He seems like a really nice dude.
he's a super nice dude. Super nice. And
I just haven't read any of his books because I'm a contrarian bastard, and everyone is reading Tchaikovsky, and I'm like, nah, I'm
yeah,
gonna
fair
wait.
enough. Fair enough. I mean, we don't expect any different from you.
But like,
Ida,
I follow him on like social media, and he seems like a very, very nice dude that I would probably have like a lot of fun talking to.
he's super nice. He's super nice. And because of social media, I got to go out to dinner and have a beer with him and whatever.
Nice.
Ida mentioned it, and Colton mentioned it also. Ida asks if I told Tchaikovsky to come to the pub. It's funny, actually. We were, after his signing, I got to go to dinner with him and the people from the bookstore that organized the signing. And then after that,
Hmm.
we went to the bookstore, and I got recruited to help him sign his books. So he was signing and stacking them up, and then I was taking the stacks and putting them in boxes so that they could store them.
For a moment, I thought you would like just actually sign.
I was
for
not
him,
actually
just like...
signing his books. No. Which
You're
is
like,
what
"Who
I
the hell
thought
is
they.
this guy signing his books."
Which is what I thought they meant. They were like, "Hey, Matt, you can help signing," and I was like, "Okay, Adrian, show me your signature, and I'll try and fake it."
Yeah.
But because we were doing this, and he was signing all of these things, and I had mentioned I was a booktuber, but I didn't really say much more. And he asked me about it, and I was like, I haven't really put out any videos in a long time. I do this thing on Sundays, the Sunday Pub. I do it every week, and it's live, and a bunch of people just sort of chatting and hanging out. And he was like, well, I could come on the pub if you want. And I was like, really? Are you sure? But yeah, he actually wanted to come on the pub. I've decided to do it as a sort of a special edition pub, not open for anyone who wants to join, because that could be crazy chaos. And of course, an author like Tchaikovsky's there. We're not just hanging out. We're focusing on him and his work. So I'm going to invite a couple of people for that one, and you know, people who are actually bigger fans of his than I am, and take questions from the chat and that kind of thing. And we're going to do it on November 24th. We've scheduled it. That's Adrian basically said every weekend this month is out, and then he said, oh, actually November's really bad too. So it turned out it won't work until the 24th. So hello, Aslan. But I'm looking forward to that.
Now, as I said, like, he sounds like a really nice dude, and I'm sure I'll love his books when I get to actually reading them. But you know, also, Ron, I disagree. I don't think Termination Shock is that good of a choice for a modern Stevenson. I think Reamdy is probably a better choice in that regard. Termination Shock has not aged well.
Thornell, BookTube is tearing you apart. Black Company, Final Architecture, and Sun Eater. If you're worried about which one to start first, you're doing them in November. I was going to say, if you want to read Black Company, along with me and Tori, we are reading it quite soon. We haven't made a really concrete plan, but we're definitely reading it this month. And I need to contact her and see how far she is in Senlon Ascends. And then right after that, we will start Black Company. So maybe in the next couple of days.
And as I already said, it's always the correct choice to read more Black Company.
Exactly. And yeah, just for that timing, reading Black Company first might be a good idea, but it sounds like Thornall's actually aiming for November. Hello, Ron. Good to see you.
Got a whole
Um,
gang. Got a whole gang here today.
Yeah.
Colton,
I have
Colton
to
has
think-
made a formal apology to you, Raf, for not being able
I
to
saw.
put in the Bright Sword.
Yes,
Well,
I saw that. And I know Ron is now reading The Bright Sword, and I hope he's having fun with
Yes.
it. I thought it was like a really good Arthurian retelling. I didn't enjoy it as much, but that's probably because I was already like so overkilled on Arthurian retellings after last year that it's very
you've done
difficult.
a lot of Arthur lately.
After that,
It's very difficult for an Arthurian retelling
you
to
made
kind of,
as like a power move.
Yeah.
Derry will be here soon, which is cool.
No,
Now I have to figure out what to read next. Now that I finished Porostan, before coming on here, and I haven't. I mean, obviously, the next logical step in me, going and rereading or reading all the Ian MacDonald novels I can get my hands on, is Chaga or Evolution Shore in the US. But since I'll be traveling to this conference in Poland, I don't think I'll have the mind space to actually focus on that. So I might just like pick something fun, maybe a reread to entertain me.
Yeah, I'm a little stalled on reading right now as well. I like The Final Architecture, which is a trilogy.
Yeah.
I finished it yesterday afternoon or evening, and it's mind-blowingly epic throughout, and especially in the climax. So I was left not really with a book hangover, but kind of like feeling like nothing else will compare for a day or two. I know there are things that are just as awesome, much more awesome even. But just like, I want to just give this space to be awesome for a little while. So yeah.
Ron,
And especially since the thing I feel like I should go to next is back to Green Angel Tower.
Yeah.
And that feels like culture shock right now.
Yeah. I mean, I know that I think it's on Tuesday or Thursday. I'm really not good with dates and stuff. It's Thursday. There will finally be an audiobook of The Innkeeper's Song by Peter S. Beagle. So I'm very excited for that one, which, is an old book, but it's finally also available in audio. And, me kind of really liking Peter S. Beagle in general. I think I'm very excited about this.
God damn it.
Thornall wants to read Black Company just because there's a book in it called She is the Darkness. Yeah.
There is that.
Yeah, there is. I'm looking forward to getting back into it. I mean, it's a reread for me, but I probably read the first Black Company book like 15 years ago or something. So yeah. And always
I've
good
like
to...
5 or 6 times by now, the entire series, and I'm always impressed by how well they hold up compared to other stuff.
Always good to pump up our friends. Philip and Alan also says, in case anyone missed it, The Way of Dawn is now on Audible.
Oh yeah, I saw that when I was at the festival. I saw Philip tweeting it out, and I will definitely listen to it. I have not decided if I want to make a video on it afterwards, because at the end of the day, I like Philip.
Sure.
He's a very, very nice person. And if I don't like the book, I would feel bad about talking about it in public.
I did a review of it, but I never go into a book planning on doing a review of it. I first of all, I just don't really enjoy being negative or creating negativity and spreading it. So I want to tell people about awesome books that they should read. I don't want to tell people about shitty books that they shouldn't read. So I went into reading Way of Dawn with trepidation, because I thought, Philip knows that that's the way I approach things. And if I don't do a review of it, that's also a review in a way. But luckily I really liked it.
I think it's like, on the other hand, it's like, I generally feel bad about reviewing. I mean, technically, I mean,
I
what I
do.
do is not necessarily like book reviews, right? The way I do videos is more like talking about like
Sure.
analysis and whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm always willing to do that. And in the case of supporting authors, I'm always willing to just like talk to them and discuss the craft and how they made the book and all of that stuff. Because
Sure.
at the end of the day, I think that is definitely helping other people to sort of connect with the work and connect with the author and so forth in a way that is helpful to them and doesn't boil down to me going like, and here's like 15 things about your book that I really, really didn't like, which
Yeah.
who needs that? Like, I'm not a book reviewer.
Yeah.
I'm always willing to talk about books that I think are bad and explain why I think they are bad, but that's like a different approach.
Hi,
I need
Tori.
to have something where I feel it's important to actually explain why it's bad. If it's just like a book that didn't work for me, then there's no value in that, explaining why there's a problem with a specific text. And I can
Yeah.
make it into like a larger thing. Then I'm happy, but
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
not happy, but
I think you'll appreciate it, Raph. At least I hope so. I don't know. I mean, how do you feel about religious wars? Like, does that interest you?
Big fan of religious wars. Big fan.
Just like the Crusades.
I have nothing bad to say about. Wait.
No, I mean, do you find them interesting? I'm not asking if you think they're good things.
I've written a term paper on the heresy paragraphs in the heresy canons in the Fourth Lateran Council and how it impacted both the Valdensian and the Cathar heresies and the
Of course you
Albigensian
have.
Crusade. So I am
Of course
very
you
much a fan of religious war.
Big holy war fan.
Absolutely.
And
It's like,
look who it is.
Nothing quite like it.
From the far other side of the world.
Good
the
morning.
early morning of tomorrow.
She's in Hobbit
Good
Land,
morning.
guys. So
I
how are the
am.
Hobbits doing?
We're being annoyed by the weather. It pretended to be summer for like 2 whole weeks. And this
That's-
morning, it's remembering it's not actually summer yet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it should take like another couple of weeks, right? I mean,
It is officially spring.
yes.
We've been
Yeah.
officially in spring for a while, but it's doing spring, very, very wet,
Springy
blustery spring weather today.
things. Yeah.
Yeah.
A
Cass is
bluster,
not happy because he's naked.
a very blustery day,
What,
in the words of Winnie the Pooh.
Yes,
the very
it is.
first thing, I have to ask you, why did you do that to Motzi?
Because Motzi can't groom himself properly, and it's very difficult to keep up with the knots in
You
his
shave
fur.
him?
We have to every now
Yeah.
and then. I've tried in the last year to try and keep on top of the mats as they've come in, but he won't let us get too close often enough. And sometimes we have to bite the bullet because the knots he won't let us get out with clippers, with just like little scissors,
Yeah.
get too big and they start drawing in the fur around it, and that then
And
pulls
then
in
it
the
becomes
skin.
a really big,
But it
ugly
pulls
thing.
in the
That's,
skin
Yeah,
around him
yeah.
too. And because the ones he won't let us touch are already in sensitive areas,
yeah.
it then becomes genuinely painful for him. So we had to get the clippers out because it's all
it's-
in the
it's
joints of his
strange.
hips and it's in his elbows, and you're like, oh.
It's strange.
So he looks hilarious.
Fitz didn't get, I mean, I've had Fitz since November last year, so
Yeah.
about a year. And she was already fully grown, not fully grown, but she was already big. She wasn't a tiny
Yes.
kitten. And she never got matted hair. I
No,
never
because
noticed.
she's got beautiful fine fur. Most
No,
Maine Coons
but
have
in
beautiful fur.
the last month or 6
Oh,
weeks,
really?
I've been cutting out, like, my approach to it is whenever she's sleeping on my lap, I
Yep.
grab the scissors or
Oh, yes.
or the nail clippers, and
Yeah.
like when she's properly asleep, I can go through her fur and I can find these
Yes.
balls. But sometimes they're like, some I've found are actually pretty big and unpleasant.
Yep. And they get that way fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, yeah, because Motzi's a Himalayan, he has like 3 coats of fur because 2 isn't enough, apparently.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's He was not happy. Thankfully, he actually quite likes having a bath, so he got to be spoilt.
Yeah,
and
he
had
didn't
a
look
lovely
upset in the
warm
bath, but when I saw like
He loves the bath.
a square meter of fur
Lovely.
lying on the ground, I was a little worried. It looked like he'd actually
Yeah.
slaughtered him.
That's why I was like, okay, seriously, this carnage has happened.
Yeah.
There's just an explosion of fur all over the lounge floor. Both Leo and myself were covered in it because it took both of us to do it.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was a mission. And he's been like a baby all night because he's like, I want to go outside. And then he remembers that he has no fur and it's cold. And he's like, actually, no, I don't.
No,
But
that
he
was
was
a bad
me
idea.
up to tell me that.
Well, Matt,
Yes,
I'm sure you
Daniel,
know.
it's a
since you
lot
have
like
fits.
dreadlocks.
Sorry.
What? Sorry, go ahead, Britton.
I was saying, well, I'm sure you know, Matt and Derry, cats are notoriously fickle creatures.
Oh, yes. Yes. Yes.
My cat was like was trying to go out the bathroom door right there when the door right over there is open. So I guess you wanted to go in my room or something. And it's really frustrating. I'm like, really, cat? Just
Yeah.
you're killing me over
That's
here.
actually strangely one of the things that Fitz has never done. That sort of typical.
Or she'll come in my
cat
room, she'll like
thing.
bust into my room and like be like, pay attention to me, bitch. And then she's like, okay, never mind. Fuck you. And then she'll walk out of the
Yeah,
room.
I just wanted to make you stop what you were doing until I had your full and completely undivided attention. Then her job is done and she can leave.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
Sorry, man. I
Yeah,
didn't mean to interrupt you there.
I feel,
No,
I feel
a little bit.
Fitz is never like that typical cat thing of I must have this, I want this,
I want to go out. I want to come in.
I want to
wanna
get
go
whatever
out.
it is, and then as soon as you comply, they change their mind. Fitz doesn't do that. If Fitz wants to go somewhere, Fitz goes. That's just it.
Fair enough.
It's weird. It's really
Yeah.
strange.
Are you not
I
a cat
feel-
person, Raph?
Thornhill is trying to troll me there. Asking
Tori.
why Drizzt may be bad.
Tori, let's not start that lecture.
He did a
Tori.
13 days of Drist last year, if you guys remember.
Yeah, I was going
It
to
was
say.
a lot of fun.
That's I mean,
Steph
that's-
has talked hours about why Driss is bad.
and I'm aware
hours.
that Thornhill is aware of it. That's what
Yeah.
I meant.
Of course. Yeah.
This
he's-
is very
he's just
clearly
trolling.
someone trying to get a rise out of me.
So it's official, I guess, official-ish. Tori and I are starting Black Company next week. Next
Nice.
week starts tomorrow, Tori. Is that what you mean? Or when next week? Or do you mean the week starting next Sunday? Or what do you mean by next week exactly?
Be specific, Tori. Be specific.
I'm actually ready to start it right now because I just finished a really good trilogy, and I'm wondering what I should read next exactly. So
So, what
I
trilogy
could start
was
tomorrow.
that, Matt? You've been teasing this. I want to know what it
I've
was.
said the name at least 3 times, but
Oh, I guess
I'll
I didn't
say it
catch it.
again.
Sorry.
For
Guess I
those who
didn't-
weren't paying attention, Britain,
Uh-huh. Sorry. I'm just
Exactly.
it's not on
It is
today.
this is the devices
the
and
final
design.
architecture
Final
trilogy
architecture.
by Adrian Tchaikovsky. It starts with Shards of Earth, and
Just
anyone
go
who's
jump
read
out of a
it,
window now.
anyone who's read it, how cute and awesome is this? Right? He signed it for me when he was here, and he drew
Oh, how great.
he drew a little architect. If you've read the series, you know what an architect is. He did a little sort of cartoon of an architect flying through space. So
That is
extremely
awesome.
cool. It's such a good trilogy. Shards of Earth is awesome. Although I would say, I'm not sure if I would say which one's my favorite, but this, I think it gets better. Like the first one is actually very good, and the second one I think is better, and the third one probably even better. Maybe that's just because recency bias and because it has such an epic conclusion. But something is in the way of your camera, Derry.
Yes, I'm just, yeah, there you go.
What was that?
Because I have a webcam that sits above my laptop camera. And
Okay.
it decided it was going to try and see which one was better.
Oh, okay.
So I'm like,
Yes,
no, I
Tori,
didn't
you
actually-
should. Shards of Earth is really, really good. It's so good.
No,
I
I
know
like
it
to
found-
read Tchaikovsky, but he's written so much. I mean, that dude cranks them out like freaking
Seriously,
Sanderson
right?
novel.
Yeah. I was talking to him. We were having a beer, and I asked him. I was like, "You're kind of known for being not only prolific in general, but like fast. How many books have you got coming out this year?" And he said 4.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh my god!" And he was like, "Oh no, wait, 5."
Oh, no, fine.
There's currently
man.
like there's.
He was like, "Well,
usually-
you know, 2 of them are novellas, so they don't
Yeah.
they don't really count."
And you're like, yeah,
but
that still means 3.
yeah, that's still 2 more than most authors.
Yeah.
It's so fascinating. It's like I usually like every now and then I scroll through like the upcoming audiobooks in Audible. In science fiction, there's usually at least 2, mostly there's 3 or 4 Adrian Tchaikovsky things coming out in the next 12 months.
That's so cool.
It never changes.
Actually,
I mean,
he was
there's always
on-
new ones. Like anytime I go,
there's
there's
not-
at least I can bet on money on the fact there will be at least 2 Tchaikovskys coming out in the next 12 months.
And
Speaking
yet
of
you won't read him.
Tchaikovsky that you want to
That's
read,
very,
Tori,
very contrarian.
Speaking of Tchaikovsky that you want to read, he said that Dogs of War is one of his personal favorites of the books he's written, and most or all of it is written from the perspective of a dog.
Cool.
So is it like his
it is-
is it like his take on We 3?
I don't know We3, so I don't know, and I
The
haven't
Grant
read this, so I
Morrison
don't
novel.
know. But it's a biologically uplifted dog who's been engineered to be a weapon
That makes me
And-
sad.
and gets loose
Mm.
and is then spending time on its own figuring out what it should do, or I don't know. I don't know the details. I haven't read it. I bought it there so that I could get it signed because he had told me already that it was one of his favorite of his own work.
Mm.
And it's also not very thick.
Yeah.
Trying to
Because
remember
Kyle
if you put a little
had Adrian Tchaikovsky
little
on
dog in the front.
with a discussion not long ago with Ken Yu, and they were talking about their different approaches to writing. That was fascinating and explained really quite clearly how he can get so many books out so fast. He does his world building completely first and then goes, right, now what stories shall I tell here?
Yeah, he said when he was
Yeah.
here.
And yes,
He said
Guns of
he said
the
he's
Sword is amazing.
Yeah, I've heard that. I've also got it on my shelf and waiting. He said he's basically always thinking about a book, like even when he's not writing.
Hmm.
And usually when he's writing something, he's already got what he's about to write in his head, so he's just putting it down, you know.
Yeah.
And he doesn't do a lot of editing. You know, he said he knows authors that do like 25 versions.
Yeah, because Ken Yu was saying he does it the other way. He's got his characters created in his head, and he kind of has to world build
Gets
as
it
he
out
goes,
when he's writing.
which
Yeah.
extends that editing process.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
I think like it really depends on like what kind of author you are, what kind of process you have
Yeah.
in that regard. And if you know what you're doing and if you're good at that, then
Yeah,
I guess it's easy to do like
it was just
the speed that like
fascinating.
someone like Adrian is doing. I mean,
Different
when I talked
approach.
to Abhi Tidar recently, he's also insanely prolific. He also has like I don't know two books per year coming out, and
Yeah.
it's like if you are that kind of author, then it works really well. If you're the kind of author that spends months sort of like agonizing over one paragraph, then shit takes longer, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's
Well,
also a thinking thing. Like,
Yeah.
I think some people think a lot in their head,
Mhm.
and like I totally don't. I think when I speak, I think when I'm doing
Yeah.
something, I think when I'm writing or whatever. That's
Yeah.
when I get my thoughts out. But I don't have a very structured bunch of thinking in here that I can access very easily to turn it into
Yeah.
something. So I think I think Adrian's much more like he's working on it in his head, and
Yeah.
then he's just the writing is just the recording part of it. You know,
Yeah.
it's
No.
amazing.
You know, if you don't mind me just complaining a bit, this just reminds me how many of my favorite authors fucking crawl like a snail to get another book out. You know, fucking George R. R. Martin and
Yes.
Cormac McCarthy takes freaking 20 years to put out a book. He's dead now, so that's fine. Well, that's not
Yeah,
why.
no rush
He's-
now, Cormac. You're
He's
okay.
excused with not publishing 3
Yeah.
books every year, but
Dead.
considering he's a corpse.
Neil Gaiman,
Yeah.
fucking, it's like, God damn it, I can't do shit today.
But I think
But-
it's more like
Though Stephen King, though,
George R.
Right.
Martin has been writing stuff. It's just not that book.
It's just
that
not
you're
the stuff we
looking for.
want him to. Yeah.
Like I don't care. He can write whatever the fuck he wants at this point.
Oh, I'd like for him to write to at least finish that series, but I don't know.
I think
That's
it
not
would be
gonna
very-
that.
I'd love
I
to
think
know
it would
the
be
answer
really
of who
good
Jon
for-
Snow's parents are. That would be nice. I'd like to see you write that. You know, I'd like.
I
to
think
see
it would
you
be
take
very,
that.
very
He's probably
helpful
written
for-
it about 8 times, and it just isn't
Yeah.
fitting right. So he has to start again, and I
Yeah.
think that's been the problem for him because
I mean,
he's
like, look at-
admitted
look
he
at-
does that. That's his system. That
From-
he
from
what I
literally
can
just
tell,
writes and then goes, "Oh no, that's not right." Back to
I'm
the
pretty sure
beginning.
he really
Right.
wants to finish that book, though. I'm like, I believe that
sweet,
George R.
yeah.
Martin really wants to actually finish this.
Though Marlon James, he's putting out stuff. I'm just waiting for him to put out that final fucking Dark Star book. So
Me too,
I-
because I finally
so-
want to read the whole thing.
Jim Butcher's almost finished the next Dresden.
Ooh.
I'm so excited. I am so excited. It is
I
ridiculous.
have
I'm like,
I
look.
have so given up on Dresden. I've read like 10 of them, and I don't think they will ever turn the level of
If
good
you've
that
got to
I
10,
would
then
need
no,
to
you-
actually go back and read more of them.
that's why I'm looking forward to reading like Terry Pratchett next year because I'm again hold me to it, Derry and Raph.
Oh, hey,
I'm
honey,
going-
I will be holding you to
Thank,
it.
thank you.
Hmm.
But I am going to read Guards next year. I was gonna do it this year, but shit kept getting in the way. So next year I'm gonna freaking
Yeah.
do it. So
Good.
you hold me
They
to it.
About
are
time.
they are without
Just
any
without
hesitation fun. They are
So
so fun.
Yes.
witty,
And
There's
they're
a
smart.
word
I
for
mean,
material,
they're not
is
just
what I'm
stupid
saying.
fun.
So I won't be too upset.
Well, there's
They are-
41
they
books
are
just in
fun.
Discworld, and then
Yes.
there's all of the extended stuff, the short stories and the children's books and the handbook for the railway and the cookbook and the Discworld. There's lots.
He was
Yeah,
And
also
Tea Story.
pretty
Terry
That and
Pratchett
Gorman
has
Got.
rock.
I was
It
gonna
makes
do
me so
Gorman.
happy you say that.
So
Tori's
let me-
Tori's typing in all caps a lot today. She must be
Gorman.
excited.
So
And there's
well,
new
that
to
and Gorman
So,
Gas
yay.
because I was gonna read Titus Grown this year, and then again stuff kept getting in the way. So I'm like, fuck. So next year I'm gonna do the whole trilogy. So haha, there you go.
Haha.
Oh. Or I'm
So
gonna
if
try
you read
anyway.
something that isn't one of those books, somebody will be at you.
There's probably other books I'm gonna read. Ugh.
I would say
This
so.
this week, I also had an idea. So everybody knows probably that I haven't produced a shot and cut and uploaded video since I don't remember when it was, but it's been a long time.
okay.
Yeah, but I've been wanting to sort of get back to something else, and of course, as we do, I've been beating myself up about that. And then I thought, but ever since I started the Sunday Pub, other than being sick once or twice and out of town, I have done very consistently a Sunday Pub every Sunday. And then Jimmy Nuts did one of his regular videos, but as a live video, which is his
Yeah, that's pretty
plan
awesome.
from now on.
Yes, we did his
And
wrap
I
up.
was
It was
like-
really fun.
I was like, I actually like doing live videos a lot more than I like the hassle of shooting and cutting and producing and uploading a video. And I was like, dude, I think I'm just going to rip you off. I wrote him and we were talking. We've been writing back and forth
Yep.
a lot about like, how do you do that and what software do you use? And there's all sorts of different things to learn that I've never done before and whatever. But I may go in that direction and do like a once or twice a month video where it's
like
just
that.
me.
Yeah.
But they're more like my thoughts on books I've read kind of videos or whatever.
Yeah,
So
because it was fun, Jimmy's wrap
Yeah.
up.
yeah,
he
and I
puts
mean,
thoughts
live
out
is
and it
definitely
was a
something that he
discussion.
does very well.
Yeah.
So
Oh, he's got a real knack for it. He really does.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah, and like when you start, I've been watching lots of tutorial videos and stuff. When you start using software that is intended for producing a live show, you have insane amounts of things you can do that we don't normally do in live videos. You
Yeah.
know, like
Because this
his
is
video
basics.
with
Yeah.
with all of his, he had all these graphics whenever a new book came
Doing
up, and he was
zooms and different
cutting to different
angles.
camera angles and whatever, and whatever. I was like,
Which
yeah,
video are you talking about?
Which
This
what?
is Jimmy Nuts' most recent monthly wrap up.
Ah, okay, that one.
Yeah.
I didn't watch that yet.
Yeah, and I mean, most
he
of the stuff he
literally
was
just went
doing,
live
honestly,
and-
was most of the stuff that was very different for him, or for most of our videos, was visual stuff, right? So to you, it probably would have sounded like his monthly wrap up, except he was doing it live, and he was
And he
taking
was
questions.
interacting with
Yeah,
the
he was
chat,
interacting
you know.
with the chat. And basically, like for a live video, all you need is the time it takes that you're live.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some preparation if you want to do a video like he did, of course, but
Yeah.
it used
Actually,
to
he
be.
said that it's setting that
It's
up.
a lot of
that,
preparation. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
took longer than when he does an edited video just to set that up. But he's done that setup now, so it makes me think it won't be as time consuming for him next time.
Talking about that, and he was like, "Man, I'm not sure you want to do this. It's like insanely time consuming." I'm like, "Yeah, but you just started. I mean, you're doing a whole bunch of setup for stuff that you will then have set up, you know.
Yeah.
And next time you do it, it'll be quicker."
Beyond
Next time
anything else, I just really love the fact that he's actually trying out different things. And
Yeah.
it's my whole pet peeve with BookTube is like, we're all doing just, basically talking heads videos, which is great because it's easy to do that, right? And it makes it accessible to everyone. But we do use video. We should actually take advantage of it and do cool
like
things.
for you, Raf, because even if you watch it, you won't see it, obviously.
Yeah.
Like he did an individual unique graphic, like a full screen graphic for each book he was talking about. And when he went to the next book, he would cut to another graphic.
Yeah.
And his talking head would be in a smaller window, and there'd be some details about the book on the graphic or whatever. It was produced. It was more produced than what we usually
That's the
do,
kind of thing you actually need
nice.
Something like OBS for, and can't just do on StreamYard.
And he's doing it with Ecamm Live, which is basically a paid and somewhat upgraded version of OBS. Yeah.
OBS has been screwing with me recently. It's
I
a good
really-
it's a good little thing, but I might need to update it or something. I don't know.
I wish I could actually use OBS fully, but it's not all really that accessible.
I wouldn't expect it to be.
Which is understandable because it's about it's about live streaming. That's not necessarily
it's a visual media for the
They
exactly.
don't expect people who are blind to be producing live streams that often, probably.
Yes.
I mean, also, I don't know if this is normal, but I would kind of expect most open source software not to be super accessible. But
it kind of depends. Some of it is incredibly accessible because people really think about it.
Yeah.
And
true.
some of it is just not because they have never heard about it. It really depends on kind of the developers. I
think like anything, people who are aware that there is a need for it are going to fulfill that need, and yet most people aren't aware of that gap. So I'm going to work toward it.
With the kind of open source software that is incredibly accessible, you can tell that these people are passionate about being accessible.
It's
because
it's a
people that
thing
do
for
open
them.
source are already passionate about doing open source
You need to do
software.
it properly.
Yeah.
Once they get into it, they get really into it.
Generally, with open source, it's like you've got potentially so many things to do, and you're doing it in your free time. That for something like accessibility, it's just got to be your jam. Something you really, really care about.
Yeah.
Part of the motivation for doing what you're doing.
Yeah. Definitely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, DK, I'm really interested in the idea of doing a better produced live thing. And we'll see how far I get. I mean, I've already played around a little bit. I was playing around with my lighting here today. Probably nobody but me notices, but I think it looks better than it did last time. It's just detail stuff. And I had a countdown at the beginning, which I've never had before.
Fancy.
Yeah, totally fancy. Exactly.
Yeah. And I mean, like, once you use something like OBS or whatever else, you can have like these different scenes and backgrounds and switch stuff around and have counters and timers and all the other crazy shit.
In this,
it is powerful.
Software, it's funny because I've been using pre-made targeted software like StreamYard before, now
Yes.
Restream.
Yeah.
I've been using it for so long. There are certain things it does which are just built in, part of the package,
Yes.
easy.
Yes.
And then I was trying to figure out, how do you do these things in OBS? And some of the answer is you don't.
You don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. And some of them is
You know,
you do this really weird thing on another website, you copy the URL and you put it in here, and then you can do it in it, and it's like really messy.
But then there's stuff you can do on OBS that you can't
Yeah,
actually.
you can't do
I
it all.
imagine
in
it's so
lots,
much more.
lots and lots of stuff. You can't do in
Yeah.
software at all. Like right
Yeah.
now, I can switch between scenes.
Yeah.
Yep.
But there's no in OBS. It's the conceptual paradigm of it is TV production, and in
Yes.
TV production, you've always got your monitor and your outgoing, so to speak.
Yeah.
Right. So your monitor is where you can set up graphics or whatever you're doing, and then your outgoing is what the audience sees. Right. And
Yeah.
you've got two screens on your screen, and the left one is where you can fiddle with everything, and the right one is what's going out to the stream. Here, if I switch to another scene, it goes to that scene immediately. I
Yeah,
don't
you
have
don't
any
get to
kind
play
of
with it before it goes.
workplace or
Yeah.
it's just like I can switch between scenes, but it's just you're either in this one or that one.
I mean, like with
Anyway.
with these kind of
Hi,
like
Brian.
graphical versions of stuff, it feels like riding like a go-kart, right? And like a cart, and then you go to OBS and it feels like you're driving a fucking
A race car.
747. You suddenly have like a full like actual like
Panels
planes
of
cockpit with
controls.
all the fucking
Actually,
knobs.
I'll be a little more detailed with that. It feels like someone has given you a race car.
Yeah.
Half of the pieces are on the floor, and you
Yeah.
have to build
We'll
it.
just completely relearn how to do all
It'll
the things.
move, but if you want it to do anything cool, you have to build it.
But
the-
once you actually build it that way, it
Cool,
does
yeah.
actually
Then-
move.
Then you can
real
do really,
well.
really cool stuff. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, it has a lot
It's
more
a-
possibilities, but it's a lot harder to get it going.
Well, I'm excited for
Your
your
operating system, but I'll need to work at it for like months until it is the cool thing that I want it to be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Rogue is starting
I mean-
Fool's Quest.
Yeah.
It's very nearly
Cool.
finished. We're halfway through the
Cool.
last trilogy when you get there.
I need to. That was actually, like I said earlier, I'm sort of at a what do I read now point, and I was looking at my shelf and I was thinking, well, I've got these Dragon something books.
Yes.
I need to reread those so I can get onto the final trilogy that I've never read. So I'm still
And
thinking
also,
about it.
you need to go into Rainwilds and you already have the expectation of what you're going to have in Rainwilds.
I
You're
know-
gonna
I
have
know
a much
Rainwilds,
better
yeah.
Experience this time
Yeah.
through.
Yeah, I've read Rainwilds. I know what it is. I know what it's like.
Yeah.
Sports Ball was early today because they played in London. Huh? England?
yeah, they've been doing that for a couple years now. Yeah, they're
Okay.
playing like Portugal sometimes, and
All right.
What
It doesn't
sport are we
make sense.
talking?
American football.
American football.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're trying real desperately to find new markets, which is why they're going and
Yeah, they're
playing
not going to find one.
in European football
Even
stadiums
though-
where people play
even
actual
though-
football normally.
Yeah, they're not going to
No.
find a market.
Nobody in
Even though
Europe
in
cares
Europe
about the
they
NFL.
think of our American football as laughable, and they always make fun of us for.
Oh
American
yeah,
football.
especially in Australia where
because-
people play rugby without pads.
Oh
Well, it's
my
not
god!
even that.
And
It's the
right-
stoppages that
Mad Men play
infuriate
rugby, I'm just saying.
Europeans because you're not allowed to waste time in real football. You will get penalised for wasting time. We have an hour and a 40-minute window to get this game on the TV, so you don't get to go over it.
Yeah.
American football has actually been optimized. They actually changed the rules so that they can put ads in it.
Yeah,
And
which is insane.
like ads
I
don't
can't
work very
watch-
well.
I can't watch
in-
European football. Just I can't do it.
Yeah, but it's yeah.
I can't do it either because I don't care about sports of any kind.
Yeah.
But
No,
if I
I
have
mean,
to watch
it's
sports, I'd rather
boring
watch sports where people
sometimes.
are actually
It's like
doing something
baseball.
interesting.
They don't fucking score from time to time. And you're like, come on, you know.
Yeah.
Some of the best football I've ever watched has been nil-all games because it's just excitement
Yeah.
and almost
Tension.
and oh my
Yeah.
god, that was amazing. And it could have
Maybe I
been
just
like
don't
an
understand it, and
goal
that's mine
draw.
too.
Yeah.
and it's very exciting. But
I just prefer hockey because it's when people actually, punch
Beat each other up. Yeah.
Yeah.
actual brawls.
Well, I
Rugby
mean,
comes
okay,
close, but not
To,
quite.
to be honest, like mostly it's because I grew up in Mannheim, and Mannheim does not, has a local football club, but it's not exactly a good one and hasn't been for a long time. But it does have a hockey team that won like the German hockey championships a couple of times while I was a teenager, which is obviously the time when you get into sports.
Yes.
So
Ron,
hockey was always the
Ron,
option there.
British, and
Ron, I think they fill the stadiums for those games because it's a novelty.
it
yeah.
is a novelty.
There
Filling a
are-
stadium twice a week for 8 months of the year.
Yeah, that's a
possibly
different
not
thing.
within the scope of American
Yeah.
football.
There are actually German American football teams. Like
Yeah,
there
and
is
there will be in
an
the UK,
American
but-
football team league or whatever in Germany. It's just nobody cares.
Yeah,
Like,
it's weird. I don't get it.
They just don't like. It's for people who are really into American football. That's fine. They have fun.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it
nobody
works for like
watches it.
one show in Germany because it's like one game in Germany. So all the
Yeah, it's a
German
novelty.
American
That's
football
right.
fans go to that one.
Right,
one
because it's the
specific
only
game,
real
professional
team that
American
plays
football
it
game
really,
in the
and-
country. Yeah.
It wouldn't work
Um,
if you had like the same level of like the same schedule that like German like football has in Germany, for example. You have like
Oh, hell no.
10
no.
games every weekend,
No, that'd never work over here.
which ruined my travels today because apparently Bayern München played in Frankfurt today.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah, that will
And
have done damage to the trains.
don't ask me how the game went. I have no idea. I didn't check. But I was traveling from Würzburg to Marburg, so I had to go from Würzburg, which is halfway between Munich and Frankfurt, to Frankfurt
Oh,
and change
no.
trains there.
Oh,
And
no. I
that's
can only imagine how insanely crowded that was.
Yeah,
it was
that
crowded,
happens
and everyone was
pretty
drunk and
regularly.
angry.
Oh,
Depending
okay,
on
so
where
they
you're
lost.
going, that happens pretty regularly. You get on the train and it's full of
Yeah.
people in scarves and jerseys and stuff
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that. Or I once took I don't pay attention to these kinds of things, although I guess in Germany, especially southern Germany, I should. I took a train from south of Munich through Munich to Hamburg
Whoops.
during Oktoberfest
Oh, no.
in the evening.
Whoops.
So
That
it was
was
full
real
of
smart,
people
man.
wearing
smart.
lederhosen who were drunk, and it was massively crowded, and it was the most miserable train ride I've ever had in my life. Oh my god!
Like using any form of public transport in the Rhine-Ruhr area on weekends is
Joanna.
basically impossible.
Yeah, I had a buddy who played rugby. I'm like, what the fuck? How do you not have CTE, man? That shit is fucking crazy.
Oh, yeah. And
I
it's
think
so
I've said
big
it on
in New
pubs
Zealand, it's
before.
insane.
If you want crazy, watch Aussie Rules.
Yeah,
You can
that's
just
even crazier
type
than
in
rugby.
Aussie Rules on YouTube, and that is crazy football. Like,
Yeah,
because
it
they
is.
literally
It's like-
climb each other to catch the ball. It's
It's
amazing.
like a fever dream of sports ball on crack.
Yeah.
It's very strange. And
And when I
awesome.
look at those dudes, some of whom I know, like,
Yeah.
I've met them, and they don't have brain damage from playing it. And then you look at American
The tackling is
football,
different,
where
but
they don't
in
really
Aussie.
do very much, but they
Yeah.
have all the pads. Like
Yeah.
they're going into war or something. And I'm like, are Australians
doesn't
just
fly in
fundamentally
these sports
tougher?
at all.
Like, it just doesn't make any
Australia's
sense.
just built different. That's what I've learned from my very
guess.
small reading of it.
Australians are among, well, how can I phrase it? They're not as physical as the Kiwis and the Pacific Island rugby nations. They're trickier. They're more likely
Yeah.
to push boundaries on what they can and can't do and really annoy the very traditional rugby players who usually come out of the Pacific Islands. And so when you get a game against Australia from any of the Pacific Island nations or New Zealand, those are amazing games of rugby because there's
Yeah.
some serious passion there.
Yeah.
It's kind of awesome.
I love watching the All Blacks play. I mean, I don't care about rugby at all, but the All Blacks are super cool. I like them a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, my former flatmate, like years ago, was part of the women's rugby team of the university here, and they
Yeah.
Like, I've spent a lot of nights drinking with the women's rugby team, and those are some really, really cool, people
And
to drink
hard women.
with. Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Hard women. Ooh, yeah. They're going to be incredibly fit, and they're going to take no shit from anyone.
No, they're
Makes
really cool
them
people to
amazing
hang out with, though. Like, really cool people to hang out with, play D&D
Yeah.
with, and get incredibly hammered with.
But
Joanna has a question for Raf.
yes, I'm bracing
Why is
myself.
Patreon problematic? There was a whole discussion about it going on in the Fireside Discord for those who missed it.
Yes, it was in several discords. I'm not sure if you're aware. And
Yeah,
what was
I
really
mean there
funny-
were videos like
All right,
Theo
no,
made a
you-
video.
you-
Okay,
posted
I can answer this question.
wasn't impressed
Here's
with
the thing. I can either
results.
answer this question seriously, and it may take a longer time, or I can try to explain it very quickly and probably skim over some of the other the important stuff.
Didn't you make a
Try-
video
try-
that at least covered part of this?
What?
A video?
No, I.
Oh,
have
okay.
not.
I thought you did a reply video to all those dark side of BookTube videos. that
Oh,
were
I
done.
did, but I didn't
Yeah,
talk.
that was-
Didn't
yeah,
talk about
that's-
Patreon in that one.
Okay.
So the Patreon thing, Patreon as
So maybe
such
a compromise
is
somewhere in the middle of those two things you described.
not, Patreon as such is not problematic. There is an issue that I see with Patreon in general, which is that you, on the one hand, you obviously keep stuff behind a paywall, which is something that I personally struggle with. To have like Patreon exclusive stuff, and at that point, you start basically selling access to a human being. And the
Yeah.
problem there is, of course, that as content creators, you build up parasocial relationships, and people start giving you money to be closer to you, especially if you have like monthly Zoom calls or whatever that some people have. And there's an issue that I see with Patreon in general, that we are basically exploiting this sort of idea of people wanting to be close to us as content creators for whatever reason, and spending money on that. And that is something that I think can be problematic at its core, because of what we're basically selling in that situation. And
Ida
I
always has
agree
the
with
hot
what
takes.
Ida is saying.
Patreon is OnlyFans without spice.
That's exactly right, though, because you are
Great.
Yeah, it's
you
not
are
totally
charging
wrong, but
money
it's
for
typically Ida.
intimate connection.
Yeah.
Hey, there are
And-
some spicy
yeah.
Patreons. I've known of them.
no,
They
Ida,
exist.
that's kind of at the core of the whole thing. What Ida just said, it does sort of scratch the same kind of itch for in different ways, and I think it's something that should be sort of like that we need to be aware of if we have Patreon as creators or whatever. We need to be aware of the fact that some people will spend money on this just to be closer to us, and that is something that makes me uncomfortable.
Weird. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's and for some people it's okay,
Understandably.
and for some people it's not, and it's
Yeah.
that
So-
spectrum
So
of
that's
knowing
at the
what
core
you're
of
okay with. And
that's at the core
Yeah,
of
I-
my problem with Patreon. It's
Yeah, I thought about doing Patreon, but I'm like, I just feel uncomfortable asking people for money.
Yeah, I'm the
It's
same.
not-
I remember a
Now,
good
you
long
can
time
send me
ago.
free
Evie
books.
asked,
I'll take those, but don't send me money.
no,
Please
Evie
don't send me
asked me a
money.
long time ago if I would start a Patreon, and I was like, I'm not even going to think about it until I hit. And I thought, okay, dream a number that's never going to happen. 500 people, and I'm considerably over that now. I think I'm almost at 600, which for my incredibly niche channel is huge.
Yeah.
And I still think it just doesn't feel appropriate. Everybody who
I've-
comes to visit my channel
It's
and comments, I know who they are, and I'm happy to engage with them on any platform they want to reach
Yeah,
out to me
and
with.
that was sort of like
interesting
the thing that I was like
I-
struggling with a lot when I started my Patreon. I was like, I didn't want to start a Patreon. I had like a bunch of people telling me I should
Yeah.
finally start a Patreon. Like
Wait, don't you have
Iskar
PayPal?
Jarak was like one of the main people that yelled at me for like months in private messages to finally start a
Yeah.
Patreon. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna do it. It's like I don't like the idea of having content behind a paywall. I don't want people. If I make a
doesn't
video, I want
necessarily mean
everyone
that,
to
though.
see this. I
I
don't want
know
head-
what-
Raph,
Yeah,
Raph, it
because
doesn't
otherwise, what
necessarily
are you
mean that,
charging
though.
money for?
But
Yeah.
it's interesting in relation to what you said or what you were talking about. First of all, like your Patreon
I
can be
actually
anything you
I agree
want.
with what Brian just said
Yeah.
too.
Like
as well. He
my
does actually have costs.
Patreon, I had a Patreon for a while, it didn't go anywhere. I think
Yeah.
partially because I wasn't putting anything special out for Patreon subscribers. I
Yeah.
put the Patreon in place in case anyone wanted to thank me,
Yeah.
basically, because
Which
I
is why I
spend
really
money
like
on all
that,
sorts of stuff,
the coffee
and
link.
it comes out of my
I
own
like that.
pocket, and I'm doing it to create content for other people to enjoy. So I thought maybe some people want to say thank you. Not that many did. It didn't really go anywhere after 6 months, so I just shut it down. But I think because I wanted to avoid exactly what you're talking about. I didn't want
Yeah.
people paying to be closer to me. I wanted them to express their gratitude if they felt like it, and
Yeah.
I wasn't waving flags or talking about it much. I was just like, I mentioned it in a video once, hey, I've got a Patreon now, and it was linked
Yeah.
in the description, and it
I
just
like
didn't really
the
go
coffee
anywhere.
link.
you know.
I know, because I think AP over at A Critical Dragon is just one of the biggest gifts that we can have as a community. I love AP's
Yeah.
channel, and I
Yeah,
quite
but, like-
often will put something in that coffee donations link that
Yeah.
he has, because
it's
I
such a-
genuinely am like, I appreciate what this guy is doing and has helped
He's
me
He's a
tremendously.
beautiful man.
but I'm
He
not
let me
locked
yap
into
with him
anything.
for almost 2.5 hours on my podcast. So, I was very kind of him.
Yeah, he's amazing. But I'm not locked into paying continuously, and so there's not an expectation that I deserve something for that,
Yeah.
some kind of access or some kind of
Yeah.
content
Yeah.
that
Now-
I've paid for. And so there's that quite lovely difference between Patreon and coffee. So there is a way, if you were looking to, as Brian
Yeah.
has done, trying to offset your costs, that
Yeah.
can be done, and it's a genuine want from your viewers to contribute. That
Though,
isn't, as Raf quite rightly says, creates this
Yeah.
tiered viewing.
It splits the community in a
experience.
way.
Yes.
Yeah.
What
like,
Ron
like
said
Ron
is,
was saying, that you get priced out of being part of the community, or you're
yeah.
second-class citizen of the community, or whatever.
I mean, to be fair, that's exactly what Moid over on Media Death Cult did,
Yeah.
and he made his Patreon. He made his basic Discord that everyone was part of, fully Patreon exclusive a couple of months ago, and I'm like, this is something that. Yes, and I was fucking pissed at that point, because
Yeah.
this is a community that people built over years, and yes,
Yeah.
we are all fans of Media Death Cult and so forth, but there's stuff
friendships
in there that
are-
everyone else has contributed, and you're suddenly locking that behind a paywall, and that feels wrong.
Yeah.
Well, and even if you're not talking about the surviving content, just the community, like the connections with people that you've been talking to every day for years or whatever, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, you can keep doing this, but you have to pay a minimum of X dollars a month. You
now have your separate private conversation that is just not the same as the group conversation that flowed when you were on this, intermediary site.
Well,
But I mean,
I'm
Moid
totally
is
fine with making
also,
money out of
like,
I'm totally fine
he's
with making
also
money
trying to do this, I think, now more than he was earlier, like as a real full-on, full-time thing. He's putting a hell of a lot of effort, and I'm sure money into his human stuff. He's not just like flipping on the camera and chatting about something.
Yeah, I mean, the only Patreon I really have given to, at least booktube wise, is Talking Story. Well, because I'm friends with the guy and I like him a lot. So,
see, here you go. Brian's admitting the spice content of his Patreon. It's the hot tub content.
I am very much willing to make more money out of having a nice body. Unfortunately, I don't have one, so I'm kind of lost.
Hey man, those pecs were great when you were making meat in that one video. You were just going off full on bite.
I should probably make more shirtless mead videos for my OnlyFans.
My Patreon didn't go anywhere. My OnlyFans didn't either. So I think I'm in the same boat as you, Raf.
I mean, I'll be honest. I'm a patron of 2 channels, and that comes from my very beginning when I found BookTube, and that was Jimmy, who I met. That was the first person I met on BookTube, and Alan at Alexandria. And being part of those Patreon communities has meant that I've known when things have happened in their lives, just because I'm part of that discussion, and I've been able to help them out. When Alan had his
car crash,
just mind-blowingly awful accident, that community came together so fast to go, we know his situation. We know this is going to do damage to their lives if we don't help them through this. And it made me cry. I'm in New Zealand. I can't do anything. But
Yeah.
I could go to the GoFundMe and be gobsmacked that in the few hours between us finding out about the accident and me learning about it and visiting the site, there was already over $5,000 in there.
Yeah.
I was like, that is what community does. And all that Patreon did was give us a head start
Yes.
because we just got that message first.
But
And-
this is the sort of like dangerous side of this. You said you feel like you're part of a community. You know what's going on in their lives, and there's a lot of people, that, especially with the world being the kind of place that it is, that
all
having
of that
that sort of like
stuff
feeling,
is available
yeah,
to
having
everybody.
having
I mean,
having
none
that
of that's
sort of
behind
connection.
a paywall. All
Yeah.
of that's on his channel. All
Yeah,
of that's there. We just get an email to say, "Hey, this is coming out," so we know to be there for the information.
Oh yeah.
And there
I
is
get it,
a
but like-
thread in his Patreon that
Yes.
is for the people who have done. And so we just have a smaller conversational group. Yeah.
Oh,
It's-
The other side of it, Tori has her own Discord.
Yes.
And she's had
And it's
bad
lovely in there.
experiences in public Discords.
I
It's
am
also
thinking of giving money to
very
Jimmy
specific.
though, because I like Jimmy's channel. And Jimmy's good people. He's got nice teeth.
And I like what Jimmy's doing. He's making and has made some significant influences on BookTube. Nobody did long form content before Chatting with Nuts started. Now everybody has one. And it's
Yeah.
normal.
Well, I'll admit, I wasn't
Everybody
really
has a
inspired
Chatting
by
with
Chatting with
something.
Nuts, but I do like Chatting with Nuts a lot.
But it's been going for a long time now, and it's been really popular, and more people now do it. And exactly, the writing is a lot of the focus in Tori's Patreon.
Yeah. And there are a
Discord.
number of authors there
So
other than her. And yeah.
Different sort of support network to
Yeah.
some degree. So again, it's that spectrum thing of what are you trying to achieve? What is this funding? And people are happy to do it for the most part. And as the person running the Discord or having the Patreon, you know what you're doing. You know which part of your souls you're selling. And it's knowing about it and being aware.
Yeah. It's a nuanced kind of situation. I totally get what Tori was saying, that like larger Discords can be way too much.
Overwhelming.
One of the reasons why I'm not on that many larger Discords. I get all of that, and my main issue with with Moit just like closing his one off was more that it has been around for like a long time, and then he goes like, well, unless you're a Patreon player, you're gonna be kicked off like next month. That feels different from going like, well, this is all too much, I'm gonna just have like a small one or whatever. That's a different optics, I guess. And optics do matter, unfortunately.
It does,
and,
it does. And also he's in a position where I'm pretty sure, I mean, I don't know, Tori can confirm or deny, but aren't there levels within a Discord that tells you how active somebody is? Surely there's a point at which Moid could go, this person, although not a Patreon, has been incredibly active in my Discord for however long.
Yeah.
Everybody over level, whatever.
That becomes really difficult though, because then you're still throwing someone out.
Yeah, true.
And you don't have a clear definition of why then. I mean,
Yes.
at least if
Yep,
you're saying,
true, that's
okay,
fine.
you're
That
paying
makes
or
sense.
you're not, you can divide people if you have to.
You know, that's fair.
but it's
That's fair.
it's a lot different
Yeah.
to say you're paying, you're cool, the rest of you are uncool, get out. You know what I mean?
I think
I just think of things
at the
that
end of the day,
when they come out, they're like lifetime this and this for guaranteed for 50 years, and then 5 years in they go, no, actually it's not really lifetime. But the people who bought when it was lifetime, they still get lifetime coverage. That kind of situation where it's like, okay, from now, only these people can join. But yeah, justice for lurkers, exactly, Tori.
Yeah. Yes, Johanna, I know why you're asking, and I hope I could explain where I think there are sort of like fundamental issues with the way Patreon works. And I'm trying to make it as like morally okay for me to ask for money as I can, and that at the end of the day, that's all I can do. I didn't mean Patreon is bad. I said that there is a problematic aspect to it in the way that we monetize parasocial relationships. And that's something that I think we need to be aware of and try to sort of, be responsible around.
And be transparent in your usage of it.
Yeah. That's sort of like what I tried to say with problematic. It was not it's so problematic we can't talk about it. It's not the
It's
problematic
the
problematic fave kind of thing, but there is an
No.
actual sort of like issue there that we need to examine, I
think-
guess.
I mean, it's making a relationship that we've formed transactional, and
Yes.
if you don't understand the nature of that transaction, then it becomes problematic. So making it transparent, making it very clear, these are the boundaries, this is what I'm achieving. People are okay.
I think there's also big differences in why people are even doing a channel, and
Yes.
I think certainly in our corner of BookTube, it tends to be very social, very community sort of oriented. Most of us are doing it primarily because we like talking to other people about books.
Yes.
But there are plenty of people on YouTube, not as much in our corner, but like most of YouTube probably are doing it at least to develop something where they could make money, even if maybe they're not making money now, but they're working towards making money.
And that's kind of, like not to dunk on, Media Death Club, but that's kind of where he is at that point. Suddenly you reach that sort of size where it means you can either basically turn this into an actual business, and then you need to treat it like very differently, because suddenly your life actually kind of depends on this shit.
Yeah.
Or
yes, because as a performer at that point, you're the commodity that you're selling.
Well, and also the way you make money on YouTube is not by YouTube giving you money.
No,
it's all of the other stuff. Because everything on
else.
YouTube is so unstable and wobbly. Like they could change the algorithm tomorrow, and all of a sudden your best videos are not making anything, and the ads aren't being played, and you're not getting any money all of a sudden. Whereas Patreon, you can say, I have this many patrons.
Yes.
I know I'm getting this much every month.
There's at least sort of
like a stable income of a sort.
I had deep thoughts about this sort of thing a few years ago. I went to a Comic-Con in Auckland, and I paid to have a photo with Nathan Fillion because I think he's amazing. And I went home that night and I thought, how awful must it be to be one of these people at Comic-Con who just has to stand there with strangers all day and have their photo taken, because they're now a commodity. They're not a person at that point. They are a product. And I spent a long time having some really deep thoughts and existential kind of existence in general, having value thoughts. And that's kind of where I landed, is that if you as a person is the face of whatever it is you're selling, whether it's a channel or a TV show or a movie, that person becomes a commodity. And if you as a person have become a commodity, how much you allow yourself to be sold is up to you. And he doesn't have to come to Comic-Cons in Auckland. I mean, it's a little bit out of his way. So he's chosen to do that. Okay, that's fine. But I would totally
and he's being paid to do that.
But that's the thing. He doesn't have to accept it.
No, sure.
As a commodity, he can go, I'm happy to make less money for my face and my time because I don't want to stand with strangers all day.
Yeah.
But that is what he's chosen to do with his life.
Kind of part of his job. Yeah.
That's what he's chosen to do.
Yeah.
And and as Moid is clearly going through this discovery of, okay, I'm now the commodity. So access to me is something I have to commoditize. Commoditize?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. We're talking about parasocial relationships because I made a video about a few weeks ago talking about authors who disappoint us, and there were people in the comments who brought up parasocial relationships, and I'm like, oh man, maybe I should have talked a little more about that, but that wasn't really the point of the video.
On that subject, because I've seen what Ida wrote and what Daniel wrote, and the field of parasocial relationships or parasocial experiences studies has been updated. Last year, there was either Cambridge or Oxford, one of those university presses, put out like they have like these handbooks of whatever, put like out a handbook of parasocial experiences last year, which is looking a lot more at contemporary parasocial relationships and how they act in the age of the internet, social media in particular, because suddenly you do have that sort of like level of feedback up to a point, and this shit is happening. And no, Ida, it's not just made to not just coined to sell stuff to people. I'm the first person who will always go and blame capitalism. I don't think you can do it this easily in this specific case. I'll still blame capitalism, but I don't think it's just that. It was originally actually coined in the 1950s in a first
I would say
early paper.
corporatism, but whatever. It might be same thing for
It's a very
Westerners.
human call to fame. We all want to be
but
admired.
there's all kinds of reasons of what is going on in parasociality, and it's certainly a field that is getting a lot of attention right now because
Oh
you
yeah, I
know,
imagine it is. Well,
Yes.
it's become prevalent now.
yeah, of
Um,
course, and I read that entire handbook, like all like 600 pages or whatever it was last year, because
That is not a handbook. That's a tome.
That's a
Just saying.
doorstop.
I don't know. Look,
Door.
I don't know if you know that, but like I think it's either Cambridge University Press or Rutledge or Oxford University Press. They have this series they call like the Oxford Handbook Off, and they're really good, like sort of like entrance texts if you want to get like a handle on like a subject, because they usually get like
Okay.
most of the sort of like researchers in a specific field, and everyone writes their like one essay, and they're grouped into sort of like
Ah,
sections about stuff, and they're like a good like way to get into like a place. And then you look at like the bibliography, and it's like you'll find out what the current like sort of like main books or and articles are that people are talking about, and then it's a good entrance place.
Oh,
But
that
they're
sounds quite
usually like
interesting.
500, 600, 700 pages.
I am now intrigued.
I
But I have other things to read.
I can tell you that you can. Ideally, you find a university library near you that has way too much money to actually buy those kind of books, because holy shit, that shit's expensive.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Or I don't know, there might be other ways of getting a hold of it that are definitely not something I can talk about.
No,
On
slightly
on
more
YouTube.
dubious in
No,
But you become a book buccaneer,
that's right.
basically.
in
Privateers
response-
of literature.
You
Yes.
can't see me raise my eyebrow, Raph, but I raised my eyebrow.
I'm sorry about the
I
buccaneer joke.
don't imagine
Yes.
It was
anybody
it
being
was
nice.
good to not make.
in response to Tori's comment about Jack Gleason as Joffrey Baratheon,
That was really upsetting. what
you know,
happened to him.
it kind of astounds me how like some people just can't tell reality from
I know.
from fiction. It was the same
Yes.
thing with Anna Gunn in Breaking Bad. It's like, okay, look, there's some problems there. Like, for instance, I don't think Skylar is really that well written of a character. Don't assassinate me. But I don't think that's a too spicy take. But it's
A
freaking
lot of
astounding.
actors do encounter this, and
It's
it is
freaking
astonishing.
astounding that people
But he
get
was a
like
child.
exactly.
I mean, that was outrageous to me.
And from all accounts,
yet you
Jack
go
Gleason's,
back a
like,
little
nice
further.
dude, easy to work
And-
with.
But the toxicity goes the other way as well. You go back a little bit further and you look at Emma Watson when she was playing Hermione and how
God.
heavily sexualized all of the media content around her was, where it was like the countdown to her age of being legally sexual. That was horrific.
Yeah.
People are
Again, she
weird.
was a little girl. That was revolting.
Yeah.
But because she was visible in the media, suddenly it was fair game to have this happening. That's terrible.
Isn't it nice not being
there are
famous?
people out there that
I
just
thought more
have
people-
no clue.
I
that
thought
these
more
are
people made
people.
excuses for Draco because Tom Felton played him. To be honest with you, that's kind of funny you mentioned that. Though, to be fair, Tom
done
Felton
well,
can
actually.
play. I was about to say Tom
earned
Felton
it.
can play some very exceptional jerk characters, and not just Draco
Yes.
Malfoy. He's very good at playing just jerk asses.
Yeah. But he's owned it. I think he's kind of gone, if that's how I'm going to be typecast, I'm going to make a point of the fact that I'm being typecast,
Yeah.
and I'm going to show how I'm actually a really decent guy
Yeah,
in
Ida's
my private
really.
life. Like he's got
yeah.
to balance that. He has balanced that really well.
Yeah, Ida, it's a good point.
But it's
Yeah, like
worked.
I thought more people would be like, I thought more people were more like, oh, Draco's not that bad because Tom Felton played him in the movies.
Ida's job is hot takes.
That's funny.
But yeah,
No, but
so it's a huge can of worms. This whole media, social, parasocial, transsocial, the expectation of any kind of interaction with a person who's put their face out there.
You know,
And
it's
yeah.
it's
Yeah, I mean that's I think that's the place where the border starts becoming a question, like with what Raf was talking about. Like all of us, we are, I mean, this is part of the reason I started, and it hasn't really worked out this way, but it's part of the reason I started the Sunday Pub, because I was like, people who have a channel are not the only people who can speak on screen.
That's right.
I actually thought it would be kind of cool to get people that I kind of know from comments or I kind of know from the Discord and put a face and a voice to the name
Yeah.
and get them on screen, actually part of the on-screen
Yes.
conversation. And it happened early on. And since then, most of those people, like a few of them gave it a good try. And then they were like, actually, I'm too nervous being on screen, so I don't want to do it anymore, which is fine.
I should. Oh, sorry.
And others, tried it once and didn't want to do it. It's become more.
Yeah.
It is mostly
it's-
people who have a thing on screen.
Clarified
But
the line between the people who want to talk about books and are happy to put a face on the screen, and the people who want to talk books but would rather not.
But when it really comes down to
It's
it,
a very fine line.
the only thing that really separates any of us from the people in the comments who don't have channels is we're comfortable about talking about this stuff on screen.
Yeah.
Or we're at least able to overcome our discomfort at talking on
Yes.
screen.
I think
That's
that's
a very
the
fine
way of
thing,
phrasing it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's probably a better way of phrasing it. But we're like none of us are doing anything massively praiseworthy or anything. We're
No.
just talking about
No, this
books, and we're just like the people who are listening to us.
Just a
We're
little bit more
sharing it on
bravery around
screen,
our face.
and they don't have channels, or some of them do, obviously, but most of them probably don't. So
Or they've got rubbish internet.
or they've got rubbish in it, whatever it is. Like
Conscious of their pajamas.
right.
No,
But
I-
the border suddenly becomes a thing when
Yeah.
someone says, I'm taking money for this, not from
Yes.
YouTube, but from you,
Mm.
and that suddenly starts separating us into, I am something worth spending money on.
Yeah.
And I want your
I don't
money,
believe I am.
Yeah. Just by thought.
I should note to Tory Talks. I'm not trying to, I was being slightly facetious about my comments about Tom Felton. I know he's had some issues.
I'm gonna get
Which-
myself another beer.
Good
When
point.
you're
Talking
when you're
about
a
Harry
kid
Potter.
actor, I imagine that's kind of part of the game, unless you're like, I mean, even Macaulay Culkin, who seems pretty well adjusted nowadays. Even he went
had
through
issues.
some-
Went
had
through
some issues.
stuff.
his dad's kind of a jerk, for instance.
But yeah, I think it's. I mean, it's always been the case, even before the age of the internet, where being a face that's recognized publicly causes problems. And now that the internet is so prevalent and people can put their faces out there so much more, I mean, a lot of these are things that would never even have been discussion points 10 years ago about, what is the line? Where is the moral obligation for
10 years
content
ago,
and
people didn't get together to read together.
But that's the thing is, but so many of these things,
Lots of
to
things
be
are new.
thinking about them is foreign. But we do think about them, I think, is a testament to the fact that we are very bookish people and we do think about these things. And not everybody does. So
Yeah,
No,
and for those of you, Daniel, I would love to see you get your shit together. Ursa, I'd love to
Or
see you
not.
on screen.
being a hot mess
mean,
is welcome too.
this was always the idea of the pub. The pub idea was not that it should be Britton and Raf and me and Derry every time.
yeah, we just like hopping on.
But yeah, no, of course. But
And the people who come to the pub are cool people because
Yeah,
it's not
absolutely.
just people on screen. I like
Absolutely.
the fact that Farnell's going to be here. I love the fact that Bex often will come in as well as Daniel. I love that Asa is always here and Ida is here because these are my people.
every week,
This is my
I wrote
tribe.
I wrote this on the fireside recently.
Mhm.
Every week, I have a moment where I look at the number of people that are connected. I'm like, why?
Yeah.
I'm always surprised. Like when I started this, I made a deal with myself. I was like, I'm going to do this 5 times Oops, my blue light just died out. Yeah, I'm going to do this 5 times, even if it's only me.
Yeah.
And
I don't think you've had one that's been only you.
no, it's never been only me.
No.
I think the lowest was one other person joined, but it's almost always been at least me and 2 others. And when I first started it, there were a number of, like, Vero joined a couple of times, and Jerome, although he hated it, he joined a couple of times. So some people who don't usually get in front of a camera were here, which was awesome. And that's always been the idea, and it still is the idea. So also, if you feel like it sometime, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
And Daniel, if you get your shit together sometime, that would be awesome. I'm not giving him time. He actually used exactly those words in his comment.
Yes, I did see.
I
I
think,
think
like-
Brian was
like,
trying to
I
join
mean,
in earlier, but I don't know if he's just, I don't know what he was doing.
I mean,
He
if
wasn't
you,
trying. You mean earlier tonight?
Yes, I saw
I
him.
mean, he knows where the
commenting
link
about-
is. So
Yeah.
yeah. He's
Also, I feel like
always
Brian's not
cautious
backward
because
coming
he's still
forward.
he's still in the I'm a booktuber, it all has to be perfectly produced trip.
To be
And I
fair,
was like, dude,
Brian's channel
sit
is
on your
kinda awesome.
sofa. Brian's
Yeah.
channel is absolutely excellent, no question. But
Yeah.
live, I keep encouraging him to join, because I'm like, live is just like, turn up in your pajamas. I don't care. Nobody
No,
cares.
I was
It's
I
about
fun.
to
do.
say, you have to
Quite
be a pretty
frequently.
exceptional
Yeah.
person
I
to
mean,
get kicked
this
off
is
of the pub. You know, you have to be like a literal like racist or Nazi maybe to get like kicked off of. You know,
I've
Don't
never
do
kicked
that.
anyone off the pub. I've threatened a number of people, but only because of their hot takes.
oh,
And
okay.
if I kicked people for hot takes, Ida would never be here.
this is
I
one
mean,
of those
I'm
niche
obviously
little
not-
pubs that only the locals know about. So
I'm
it's
obviously
very
not the
rare that we're
landlord
going to
here,
get
but-
troublemakers.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like Matt will
Because Raf's
probably agree
already
with
here.
me, but like if you want to join and you're uncomfortable about your image on camera, you can just leave your camera off and just be on with like audio, right? That's
No,
an option.
unacceptable. Unacceptable. No, I'm joking, of course. Yes, you could join with audio. If you join and you join with your microphone and your camera off, then there's no point. But
Yeah, then just
only
stay.
microphone is absolutely acceptable.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
totally fine.
but like just for because I know some people are just like very awkward about like their image, and I'm like,
How
but
they
just like,
look.
you know,
Yeah,
just
sure.
do
Yeah,
audio.
it's fair enough. I mean, it takes a bit to get over, and it takes
It's like this.
There's a kind of courage to going, okay, I will let the world see my face, and
Yeah.
I don't know everybody who is now looking at my face, but I came to terms with my face quite a while ago, and I was like, well, this is my face, and this is what I look like. So if
Yeah.
I know you through whatever means, and so far it's only been by text, knowing what my face is doesn't change anything. This is my face. This is what I look like.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
I
but,
don't
like,
wear
you know.
makeup. I have no hair. This is my face.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, but like I do understand that like some people are uncomfortable about that. I personally don't care, which I think is partly because I'm blind. I can't see people's reactions when I talk to them, so I have to just assume that everyone is constantly just like drooling because I look so fucking awesome.
obviously, we're all
Yeah, yeah. But
absolutely
you know what I mean? It's like-
stunned all the time.
Not having that reaction, I think, is incredibly helpful for me when I talk to larger, like an actual audience. It can be not being able to recognize, body language, is a serious drawback when you're in like a one-on-one conversation with
imagine.
someone. Where
Yes.
that kind of stuff is important. But like when it comes to doing like public speaking, so to speak, it can be really helpful because you can't get sidetracked by everyone checking their phones, ignoring you, and that kind of stuff can completely just
Yes,
completely
I've seen
distract
that.
you and derail your conversation, but your public speaking stuff. But like when in that regard, it's an absolute bonus to not be able to see the audience. I'm like, yeah, I'm just gonna assume that everyone
like
is
that.
wrapped.
I'm just going to assume everybody got my joke and they're all
Yeah.
silently laughing. Absolutely. And I do appreciate Brian here. He's actually watching football. We're a distraction. And
Yeah,
I get
exactly.
that.
Football
It's not the
on
Well,
first time.
my
I
Cowboys
often
are
do
playing
have.
tonight against the Steelers, so that should be fun.
Fitz
That's
is
the
so
NFL.
fluffy, I can't handle it. Absolutely.
You're being Agnes from Despicable
Oh
Me.
my
He's so fluffy, I'm going to die.
Oh my
Yes.
god. She is I'm
She's
Fitz
so
looks like a
beautiful.
bobcat.
I'm
She looks
a
like she's
little
about to
sick of
attack
it actually.
someone in 5
Like
minutes.
the other
Because
day
it
she
gets
was
everywhere.
her favorite place is on top of the bookshelves. So
Oh,
she's up
so
on
it's
top of
all
the
on
bookshelves. Well, no, it's not that. I mean, I haven't looked at the top of the bookshelf, but it's probably a lot of furballs up there.
Oh yeah.
Also,
But
Brian,
she's coming
Yeah.
off of the bookshelves and she's jumping down onto her cat tree and
Which is not coping.
down to the floor. And I'm sitting on the sofa watching her come down. And then I realize there's like a fist-sized ball of fuzz just floating in the air that just randomly fell off of her while she wasn't doing anything. I mean, she wasn't scratching her. She just coming down from the bookshelf and there's fucking balls of fur flying
Yeah.
through the air. It's unbelievable.
We get it with moths. Well, we won't for a while now, but the fluff of them. There's so much.
It's unbelievable. I don't understand. Like, she defies physics. I comb a kitten out of her every week, and she's
Where
only
does it all
getting
come from?
bigger.
Yeah.
She gets bigger, even though I'm removing that much hair from her every week. The other really weird thing about extremely fluffy cats, or this particular one, every cat I've ever had, and I've had a few, has had fur balls, which they have to cough
Yes.
up sometimes. She has
Yeah.
the longest hair of any cat I've ever seen, and she has never coughed up a fur ball. Not
Knock
once.
on wood.
I don't know why.
To be fair,
I don't know how she does
that
it.
my
But
sister's cat did either. Maybe that because Maine Coon fur is really fine, and it may be that. Whereas Motzi it's almost wool. Like when we shaved it was like we've shorn a sheep. It was like a fleece of fur. It was
yeah, I
so
saw
thick.
it.
It was
Like-
unreal how
Yeah.
much came off this cat.
Yeah.
And he looks like a plucked chicken right now. It's
I don't even
kind
want
of
to imagine
hilarious.
Fitz without her fur. That
It's
would be
really
so
hilarious.
weird. That
And
would
I
be
did
so
not
weird.
We
My cat
have been
hasn't
setting
furballed
up-
either. I either she does it and I don't see it, or she just doesn't do it. But I've not seen it.
Is she
Maybe
a
I'll
long
ask
or
my mom
short-haired
about it.
cat? Your one.
She's short hair. You
Yeah,
know,
they tend to.
talking going
be
a
an
little
issue.
non sequitur, but still about cats. But
Yeah.
you know, the other day I learned that I've had my cat for 11 years now, and that just shocked me because, like, I
She's
don't
doing
I don't
well,
think it
if
hasn't
she's
been that
11.
long.
yeah.
Yeah, she's still kicking. She's
Tori, it would be really cool
That's
if you
awesome.
could, actually spin on live streams.
That
I
would
wish I
be
had
really
a spinning
cool.
wheel. I've been thinking about getting one, but they're like way beyond what I could currently
get like
afford.
a
but like,
get
Oh,
like
yeah,
a
do
they're
it.
really
raft button.
expensive.
You could do spinning sprints.
You can just get like
You
a
could.
you can get like a raft button, and you
I
can
know-
just press
I know
it,
that
and it
to
says
some degree-
capitalism on it.
I
Capitalism.
know that to some degree that's a
Capitalism style.
joke, but we were for a while keeping the fur from Mott's when we groomed him to give to my niece, well, part niece, because she got into felting and she was making felt
Yeah.
from Motzi's wool, from Motzi's fur, and it was really funny. It was just, this is such a strange thing that we're doing, putting Mott's fur in a bag to take to this other person who's then going to craft with it, which is
The other good thing about me learning OBS and considering doing new and interesting things with live streams
Yeah.
is I will probably end up with a Fitz cam
Yeah.
on the Sunday
absolutely.
Pub. Because I'm just going to be connecting like 2 or 3 at least cameras to my computer, and then I may as well do a Fitz
When
cam,
it fits.
so you
Absolutely.
can all watch.
Because
Fitz
we all
sleep.
know the internet loves cats. So
I am still convinced the only reason that like 30 people connect to the pub every week is that they're hoping to see Fitz. It
Of
can't
course.
be me. It
'cause
might be you
she's
three,
far prettier than
but
you are.
I think it's possibly Fitz. She's much prettier than I am. I recently posted because I was looking for a new cat tree that could actually
Yeah.
deal with like a 6.5 kilos, 14-pound cat.
Dog.
Because
weight cat.
my cat tree is actually falling apart from her jumping on it. And
It's not. It's not
I went
suitable
to,
for purpose.
No, I went. Well, it's suitable for cats, but not for like cats that are
Not this one.
2.5 times the size of a normal cat. So I went to Reddit, and of course there's a Reddit subreddit
course.
just for Maine Coons, and I posted a photo of Fitz, and it was really annoying. I shouldn't have posted the photo of Fitz because instead of getting replies, I wrote them. I'm
You just got
like,
lots of,
my cat is
"Oh."
destroying my cat tree. I want a Maine
Where
Coon
do I get?
stable cat tree. Where do I find one? And most of the comments were, "Oh my God, she's so gorgeous."
Yeah.
I'm like, yes, she is. You're right.
You need to get
But
handyman and make your
do you
own.
know anything about a cat tree? Yeah, I found one actually. Some people in
good.
Ukraine on Etsy make a really cool modular cat tree system with all sorts of different bits and pieces. Very cool.
That is very cool.
Okay, Ida will pay to watch a Fitzcam. I'm going to start a Patreon, and I'm going to put a Fitzcam
And
in
Fitz
the
is behind the
Patreon. And if you
paywall.
don't pay, you don't get Fitzcam. There.
Yeah,
Now I know what to do with
Funny.
Patreon.
absolutely. I
Patreon.
love that Brian's thinking about adopting a cat, even though far more of a dog person. And it depends on the cat as to the less work.
Well, you don't have to walk them. I mean,
No, you don't have to walk them, and you don't need to train them necessarily, but they can be trained. And depending on the breed, the grooming can be an issue.
Only cats.
I'm definitely more of a dog person because I prefer to be smarter than my pet, and I'm very clearly not smarter than a cat. But with dogs, there's a chance, depending on the dog.
Again, depending on the dog. Yeah,
But then
because
I'll
there are-
never get like a fucking
astonishingly
border collie.
intelligent.
I want like a Labrador or something that is really stupid, nice.
No,
If
it's
you
not
get
so
a
much
cat-
stupid. It's prepared to just be chill. Border
Yeah.
collies have no chill.
Yeah.
German shepherds
the-
have no chill.
Get a
Poodles
cat, Ralph,
have no
and
chill.
then the first time it's trying to jump up on top of the bookshelf and it fails, you'll feel
Yeah.
smarter than it.
I've
People
seen-
don't
I've seen-
realize what a
I've seen
goofy
grown
klutz
grown
it is.
Labradors just walk into a closed door in the hopes that it will just like go break open because they're too heavy. And that's my level of smartness. That's how I feel most of the days.
They're just big doofuses. I love them. They're gorgeous.
Oh yeah, they're absolutely perfect. They just need someone to constantly make sure that they don't die. But
Pretty much.
Yeah,
They're like the
whatever
perfect
you do,
toddler
don't
stage.
get a Dalmatian. Like if you think dogs are dumb, Dalmatians are the dumb dogs.
Yeah.
Like they're
not bright.
dumber than all the other dogs. Oh my
They're
god,
really
they're
not
so
bright.
stupid.
I have a dog and a cat, a Schnauzer and a orange, kind of orangey yellow cat.
My cat's probably bigger than your dog.
Probably.
If you've got a
I don't know.
Schnauzer.
Yes, capricious fox.
But
Foxes are dog
Schnauzer's very
hardware with
cute,
cat
and they have very
software.
cute eyes.
Love it.
And I love her very much.
Yes.
I'm closer with my cat personally. My cat's more. She's gone at
Ida's
the
right.
moment. She's
Border
probably.
collies-
Brooks has actually got a book
she's
question.
probably salty at my shit
Book
talk.
question. Book question.
Sorry.
Would Shards of Earth be a good place to start if you've never read any Tchaikovsky? I actually think a good place to start, because that's what I did, and it was recommended to me, I think, by Pete, Ponderings of Pete.
Oh, he's a huge fan.
Tchaikovsky's written a million novellas. So I read Elder Race, which is a very short and simple story with a twist, and it gives you a feeling for how he writes. Now, he's been writing for a pretty long time, and he himself says that the stuff he's writing now is nothing like Shadows of the Apt, which was like the first big
That was the first published
thing
stuff. Yeah.
that he wrote. He says that, I mean, I'm trying to remember if we ever asked him where to start. I mean, his big thing that
think
everyone
Kyle did
knows him
either.
for is Children of Time.
Children of Time. Mm.
That is the big
But he did
breakthrough,
say on
like-
Kyle's stream that he's always a little bit sad that Guns at the Dawn didn't take off like
Yeah.
Children of Time did.
Yeah.
And that's one I've read. I started with Ogres, the novella, and thought
Yeah.
that was amazing. And then I read Guns at the Dawn, and I think that's just fantastic. It's a great novel.
One of the things he said when I was talking to him here, that he really loves of the
It's
books he's
Dogs
written.
of War.
He's very proud of Dogs of War, and
Yeah.
this is also a trilogy, but they're not. It's not really a trilogy; like they're very separate books. The next one
They
is
just work
about a
together.
genetically engineered bear who's a weapon, and it's all set in the same world, but they're different animals, different characters. He said this is really good. It's quite small. I haven't read it
quite
yet, so I
small.
can't recommend it from my experience. But he said it's something he's very happy with. Guns of the Dawn, which is about 4 times the size of that book,
Yeah, it's a proper fantasy
is-
size novella.
yeah,
Sorry,
is-
novel. Yeah.
is meant to be really, really good. Everybody I know who's read it loves it. It didn't
Really
do that
good.
well. That's what he was talking about. He was
It's because it
kind of
doesn't fit
disappointed.
tidily in a
it
genre.
doesn't have,
So
doesn't have a
they
clean
couldn't
label.
pitch it to
Yeah.
an audience. But
It's either
for
wanted a
people who
pit
just-
bull or a pug at some point.
Although he said after it was published,
Yeah.
a friend of his came up with the perfect catchline for it.
Oh
Um,
God, yes.
Pride and Extreme
and
Prejudice.
extreme prejudice, because
Because
it does
it's
have
about-
a very
it's about
Jane Austen
a-
tone, but with
Yeah.
a very Indiana Jonesy kind of vibe.
It's about
set
a
in a
woman
jungle,
in
on a war front, and
Yeah.
it's just
It's kind
really
of a
cool.
19th century war novel, but the main character is a woman.
Yeah,
Who
who
You
is
know that
from like
who
a
is in the
Pride and Extreme
style
Prejudice is a joke that Terry Pratchett
Well,
made in
Monstrous
Snuff.
Regiment.
Nine Snuff.
Was it?
In Snuff, he has that very specific.
Oh no, you're right, because it's the
Yeah. When Vimes meets the five sisters and tells them to get proper jobs, and one of them
Yes.
decides to become a novelist and write a story about
Yes.
all the things that Pride
That's
and
with the
Prejudice
one
is
with the
about, and
sisters
Vimes
missing,
tells her
and
that
she's a
it kind of
lumberjack.
sucks, and then she actually publishes it and calls it Pride and Extreme Prejudice, and it's about
Yes.
stuff.
That's exactly right.
But to answer
That's a very good
Ulsa's
thing.
question, Shards of Earth is, I think, very easy to read. It's quite a roller coaster. It's full of really interesting characters. It's full of really interesting action. There's epic universe-changing shit happening every 4 chapters. It's also got lots of interesting intrigue and intergalactic politics. And the thing that Tchaikovsky's really known for is he writes non-human perspectives extremely
Really
well.
well.
And Shards of Earth, or the trilogy, the Final Architecture, is full of alien races that humans interact with, or alien species that humans interact with, that sometimes humans have some sort of relationship with them, but it's very clear nobody really understands them.
Yeah.
And these alien perspectives are what I think make his stuff more interesting than people who are writing similar things. Is he very much gets into these, really gets into these alien perspectives. One of the main characters of the Final Architecture is a Hanalambra, and the Hanalambra are giant crabs. And they look a lot like giant crabs, but they have a totally different culture. They have to wear translators because they don't have the mouth parts to even start speaking our language, and we can't try and speak theirs.
Yeah.
They're really, really interesting.
Invertebrates and empathy. I love it.
Invertebrates and empathy. Yes, that's a pretty
about
good.
Right, actually.
That's a pretty good
Entirely
description.
sure what
yeah.
that
In a
means,
nutshell.
but all right.
Yeah, but one of the he because he's
Arnold has
because he's
a
so
badge.
into these kind of weird. First of all, he's super into insects. Just as a person, he's
yes.
really into insects. His second question to me,
Oh, I thought you said
when I
never mind.
his second question when I met him, I told him I grew up in Australia, and he said, "Oh, you guys have so many of the most interesting
Poisons.
deadly spiders, don't you?" I was like, yeah, we do. We do.
Something
yeah.
like 7 out of the top 10.
Yeah, he was like, I've always wanted to go to Australia because of the spiders.
Oh, he would love Australia. He would
I
totally
don't
love
think
Australia.
anyone has ever said to me they wanted to go to Australia because of the spiders.
Yeah.
But
If anyone's going to, it's going to be him.
He also said there's a particular alien species in the Final Architecture who are basically giant slugs in a way, except they have pseudopods on the top of their heads, which are sometimes eyes and sometimes arms. And I said to him, Final Architecture seems really good. Everybody I know who's read it loves it. It's kind of a pity it's only a trilogy. Are you going to write more? And he was like, well, those guys, I think they're called the Castigar. I didn't get to do much with the Castigar, and I've been thinking I want to do more with them. So he was really interested in doing something with the giant slugs.
Okay.
But yeah. But apparently there isn't going to be any more Final Architecture. There might be a graphic novel coming up at some point, but I would say also yes. Start with the Final Architecture, or if you want something easier, try Elder Race, which is a novella. It's quite short, or Dogs of War.
August.
Isn't that the one he rips off Gene Wolfe, apparently? I heard there's one of his novellas where he kind of riffs on Gene Wolfe stuff.
I have heard that there is a short story by Gene Wolfe that has something in common with Elder Race, but I have not read it, so I don't know.
Yeah, that's the one. I've not read it either, but yeah, the Elder Race one is the one that kind of ties in with something Gene Wolfe did, which Ron may know more about because I seem to remember him bringing that up.
It's not too much of a surprise because Adrian said he is quite a Gene Wolfe fan.
Fun.
So
Look,
Yeah.
there's worse things to be than a Gene Wolfe fan.
absolutely.
Speaking
Absolutely.
of Gene Wolfe, I'm reading mostly horror this month, but I am making a slight exception, just one, and I'm doing a buddy read with Liam and T from an Erudite Adventure, and Liam's brother, who also has a
Yeah.
YouTube channel. We're reading The Wizard Knight right now. Yeah.
The Wizard Knight is so good.
I
I
couldn't
love
get
The
into
Wizard
it.
Knight.
I'll say I'm liking it more than The Land Across, which was my last Gene Wolfe read. Pacing's a little jerky. So, Matt, didn't you say you DNF'd The Wizard Knight?
I did. I didn't.
I
I,
can- I can- I
don't
can
know if
see
I
why
got
you
halfway
prob-
through Wizard.
I think I can see why you might have done that. The pacing is a little. I don't know. It's a
I
little
mean, this
weird
was
to me.
also like 20 years ago, like shortly after
Yeah.
it came out, whenever that was.
Oh, fair enough. But I have to
So
say,
my love of Gene Wolfe and my tastes have no doubt changed significantly since
I
then.
think the Wizard Knight does hold up really well. I really enjoyed it because it ends up being an Arthurian retelling in some ways. But you
Okay.
only recognize that at like absolutely near the end.
Towards the end, right?
Unless you're
okay.
like really, really into Arthurian stuff and go like, wow,
Or
I
unless some
recognize that
booktuber
one
just
throwaway
told you.
line you just put there, mister.
Right. Okay.
I'm digging
I
it though.
didn't know that.
It's
Okay.
I think
I like
the
short
Land
chapters.
Across, I think, is better than. All right, the Land Across works much better if you've ever been to a post-Soviet Eastern Europe. Is my point.
Okay. The
Because
first
it
book
does
is nice.
capture
Yeah, I forgot that.
it does capture that very specific sort of like weird atmosphere that you can have if you travel through, say, like Hungary or Romania or Bulgaria at the moment. It does capture that weirdness incredibly well. But if you've never been there, if you've never done this, I guess a lot of it just like blows past you. It's like, why is this a big deal? And it's like, yeah.
Yeah, I just remember it was a huge nothing book. The only thing I really remember it was like a muddy hand running around murdering people and just
Which book?
stoking
Sorry.
chaos.
The Land Across.
The Land
It's
Across.
a newer Gene Wolfe,
I read it.
one of his last novels that he wrote, and it's
Okay.
about this guy who's traveling through Eastern Europe on a train, and he, for reasons that are kind of never fully explained, he's taken off the train by the security apparatus of whatever country this is set in, and then he's basically left in this country and can't actually leave because they need to do something, and it has a lot of like Kafka going on there, of him
Okay.
going trying to figure out why this state has decided to actually sort of like keep him in the country without like any legal due process and whatnot. And then there's also vampires because I don't know.
Because why not?
Vampires are fun.
Vampires are always good.
Yeah.
But I'm
I've been
curious
trying to get
see-
hold of. Sorry.
No, sorry, Derry, you go ahead.
No, because spooky season for books, I thought I'm going to read a couple of Stephen King's I've just never got round to reading, in Pet Sematary and Salem's Lot, because I like Stephen King. How have I not read them? I don't know.
I want to
just
read
haven't.
Salem's Lot too.
Can I freaking find them anywhere that's not full price? No,
Salem's
my
Lot's
library doesn't
good.
have them
All right.
in any format.
Salem
The
Lots.
second-hand bookshop I went to had Rose
You'd
Matter.
think
That was the
those two
only
would be
Stephen
in like
King book.
any secondhand bookstore somewhere.
You're right? No, Rose Matter. It was the only Stephen King book I found in all of the secondhand
Wow.
bookshops I went to, and there was
What?
one copy of it. I was like, "Are you serious?"
Wow. Okay.
I'm
That's
going to have
insane.
to buy a copy new. I'm not okay with that.
So I will say Salem's Lot is a good one, though I think it does what Salem's Lot plays with a lot better. which is the evil under this kind of
Oh,
quaint.
I love it. It is one of my all-time
You know,
favorites. I've read it
Well
so many
done,
times.
small
John.
town.
Just quickly. John
Oh,
comes on. I
nice.
love picture. Yeah. Cool. Do it.
That's
It's so
excellent.
good.
But yeah, I was like,
You
how
would
is this
think
possible?
that Stephen King, like,
There
there
should be
would be
so many
millions
copies
of
of those
love
books
that
everywhere.
Stephen King books everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Like,
was
I could-
certain
I
I
could-
would be able to pick it up at the second
I could probably, in 5
had to go
minutes,
to
find
free and still
3
couldn't.
used copies of Salem's Lot in Berlin.
Yeah.
You know, so you'd think, okay,
I was
that's
gobsmacked.
weird.
Absolutely
Well,
gobsmacked.
It's on my list as well.
Yeah.
I've only read I haven't really ever read anything by Stephen King that I would call horror. I've read
The ones I like and love tend to sort of be more psychological. I love Misery. I think Misery is a freaking masterpiece.
I haven't read
But-
I haven't read that much Stephen King. Well, I've read
Yeah,
All of
it's-
Dark Tower twice and The Stand, and I think,
I love
and
The
then
Stand.
some short stories a long time ago.
I've read
Uh,
I've read the first 3 Dark Tower novels, and then I kind of stopped, and I don't know why exactly I stopped. I think it was something of those like stupid reasons, like festival season, and I didn't have access to the books
Yeah.
until like 3 months later, and then I had forgotten about it, sort of. So I'm gonna
Mhm.
reread the first 3 and then kind of go back and
It's
do the rest.
Yeah, because I've not
And I
done
think
any
that's
of
all
the
the
Dark
King I
Tower.
ever need, because the only other King
But
I've read was the Kennedy book, and that one sucks.
Oh, really? Because I haven't read 11/22/64, but I
Get out
have
of here,
read
Ralph.
The Shining, and I've read
That book
Christine,
made
and I've
me
read
so
Fire-Razor, and I've
fucking
read.
angry. That book made me so angry because not because of like anything that happens in the book, but there's so many fucking editing errors in the thing where you can just like tell that King is at like a power level as a writer that he can just like do whatever the fuck he wants,
Yeah.
and no editor, no publisher is going to gainsay him. And there's inconsistencies in that book that are part of the plot that don't make any sense because no one
Yeah.
ever fucking double checked anything, and that
Yeah, that
annoys me because it feels cheap. It's like, you're fucking Stephen
Could have
King.
been
You're a
better.
big motherfucking publisher. You can actually deliver a proper product, but you didn't care because whatever. And that pissed me off so much.
the real reason Raph doesn't like it is because so many other people do.
Called out.
I think 11/22/63 is one of his best
Because it's one of
novels,
the
but
popular
okay.
ones. When when
It's
people
extremely popular.
mention
Yeah.
recommendations
Yeah,
for
this
new
was a
readers.
topic I'm quite fascinated in, which is the JFK assassination. But
See, I couldn't care. I mean, I'm in New Zealand. It's so not a part of our history.
That's like the
It's
one
not
reason why I
gets
think
told.
a lot of
Yeah.
King, or like a lot of like newer Stephen King, doesn't work for me, is because he plays so much with like 1950s American nostalgia, and yeah, I don't
I
get
mean,
that.
we can get that as a time period. We get the vibe of it, that because that did happen in a lot of Western culture. So while the specific touchstones aren't the same, the vibe is still there. So it may not be the Dairy Queen, and it may not be this particular brand of gas, or it may not be this particular TV show, but the teenage behaviors are the same and the mindsets are very similar. So in terms of when he talks about small towns,
Yeah.
that resonates because it carries across.
Mm.
And he does get relationships really well. He does
Yeah.
groups of people like nobody else. I've never read a small town like one that Stephen King can build. He builds small towns
And just
excellently.
the daily life stuff. Like,
Yeah.
he can write a relatively normal day in someone's
Yeah.
life, and it's still interesting somehow.
I just know that I could go to any one of those small towns and recognize those characters
Yeah.
because I can read them and I don't need to be reminded who people are. He introduces everybody in such a way that they're
Yeah.
identifiable. So you remember who
Yeah.
they are. You remember what their tick is. He does it so well. So
Yeah.
I was really looking
the other-
forward to reading a couple more,
Yeah.
and I can't find either of them.
Like Stephen King is too American for me, and the other thing that
Yeah.
makes Stephen
It can be.
King less interesting to me is Stephen King is an incredibly good storyteller.
Mm,
He's
not
not a
necessarily
good writer. He's
Yeah.
not a good writer.
Yeah.
I don't
His
think
books do
he ever
work well on
claimed to
audio,
be a
I
good
have
prose
noticed.
stylist, but
Thornall?
yeah, all right.
Or just quickly, Thornall. I would say And a lot of really hardcore Stephen King fans will tell you different things, but I think they're being hardcore Stephen King fans.
Yeah,
I think
don't
the
think it's
the only one you really kind of
No, I
need
still
to
love
read before
Wrath.
you read The Dark Tower is Salem's Lot. I wish I had read Salem's Lot before I read The Dark Tower, because there is a pivotal character from Salem's Lot who is in The Dark Tower, and there is quite a lot of Salem's Lot exposed. The story of Salem's Lot is kind of told in The Dark Tower, so it's better to read Salem's Lot before. If you want to have that Leonardo DiCaprio meme moment where you point at the television over and over again, then there are a bunch of other books you can read, and they all pop up in The Dark Tower. But the only one that has a really, really, as far as I understand it, the only one that has a really, really, really strong connection to The Dark Tower and is spoiled by reading The Dark Tower is Salem's Lot. So, and you've read it.
Okay.
So, all good.
If I can kind of go on a mini rant real quick.
Please.
Stephen King can do endings.
Yes, he
Not
can.
always. He can't always do them well, but he can do them. 11/22/63, for instance, or It is a Green Mile.
I'm sorry, but the ending of it is terrible. What are you
ending
talking
of
about,
11th, the ending of that fucking terrible Kennedy book is not a good ending, because he does like 3 endings.
Anyway.
A lot of people
I will
hate
dispute this rant.
A lot of people are like, "Oh, The Stand," and I'm like, "Okay, some other ones."
I like the
and then
end
they
of The
and then they struggle because the climax of The Stand is so bad.
A lot of people
I like
hate
the end of The Stand.
the
I think The
ending
Stand is
of The Dark Tower. I loved it. I thought it was the only possible ending there could be, and it was awesome. But a lot of people absolutely hate it because it's just not satisfying in the way they expected to be satisfied, I think.
And like anything, it's that expectation of what they think it will be.
Yeah.
And so you go, Ron's saying the end of The Stand is rubbish. I really love the end of The Stand. But I went in knowing nothing about The Stand. So
no,
I very much was accepting of what I got, and I really, really liked it.
No, Tharnal, I still love Raph, even though he's wrong.
The Shining has a great ending.
Raph also has to be wrong sometimes.
Raph is mostly wrong, but he's very insistent.
I didn't want to say it, Raph.
Hey, I'm happy to be wrong. You're just not allowed to tell me I'm wrong in a way that I'm going to accept.
No. Seriously, everyone is always very much welcome to tell me that I'm wrong, and I'll always gladly listen.
Yeah,
I know I can come across as way too angry, way too ranty, way too loud. I'm aware of that. I'm really sorry.
I'm sure I'm wrong in several places too.
I try to not do it. I'm aware of it. Nothing I ever say is like actually, set in stone or whatever. I'm always willing to change my opinions. I'm always willing to listen to everyone else.
I enjoy talking to you, Raph, because you're more than happy to have a discussion about things that we don't agree on, and that's always just the most satisfying thing ever.
The Shining, I've only watched the movie, and I know Stephen King hates the movie, and I think that's the one reason why it's a good movie, because every time someone tries to make a Stephen King movie and Stephen King likes it, the movie sucks.
But The Shining is possibly the one adaptation that is so vastly different from
it's like
the book.
calling Stalker an adaptation a different product entirely. Roadside Picnic. It's a different take on the story. Like, it's not really an adaptation. It's
completely different. It's like inspired by.
Yes, and I understand why Stephen King was annoyed by it, but I think
it was fabulous.
King doesn't necessarily write stories that make for good television or movie adaptations.
Because it's a lot of Stephen King's writing is in characters' heads. It's perception. It's
he does a lot of internal.
Shawshank Redemption, or The Green Mile, or Misery.
But those stories can be told visibly. Because we're seeing cause and effect in those movies.
Like, for instance,
so many of his psychological horror, it's in someone's head. How do you get the fear of something ephemeral on screen? Yeah. You can't. You have to give somebody something to look at. And the minute you do that, it's not as scary as in the book, where it changes for every specific person.
Yeah, and I think like the Shining movie does do that fairly well by doing it very differently than the book.
Yeah, I think it had to. I mean, I can't imagine how you could do The Shining and be true to the book in the way it would need to be.
Well, there's a TV adaptation that Stephen King worked on, and it sucks.
Yeah, no, I don't think Stephen King is the greatest screenwriter on the planet because
But it
he's,
comes
he's
back
too
to-
descriptive, you know. And I'm like, that works
But it
for
comes back
books,
to
but it
Raph.
doesn't work
He
for.
tells stories. He's a storyteller. He's not necessarily a writer. He knows how to hook you. He knows what's going to make a good story. He knows what makes it exciting, and he knows what makes somebody relatable, and he knows how to hook you emotionally. But he's not necessarily the greatest at writing it down.
He's also one of those authors that when you're talking about something he did, it's very important to be aware of the phase in his life in which he did it.
Oh, yes. And how
He
much
spent a
he
long
was taking
time
drugs.
totally off his face on coke.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Which made it
completely
much
full
better
time
books,
What
I
off
flavor
his
drugs
face.
he was on, how much of that drug
that's
he
one of
was
my
on.
favorite takes from you, Raph, is he wrote better when he was on drugs. It's funny.
I mean,
it's
think
interesting.
it's
It's interesting with the Dark
from
Tower
my-
because the Dark Tower started before that and went through that and then ended after that. And you can kind of tell.
Oh, the Dome's
at
one of
least
his
on a
weakest
reread,
ones, I think.
there's a part of it
It's
where
him-
you're like,
Yeah.
ooh, he's getting pretty freaky with it right now,
It's-
isn't he?
if you don't mind me complaining about the Dome real quick, the Dome is him trying to do like a George Orwell like political allegory, and it just sucks because a lot of it is just like Bush hating and like Cheney hating for like 900 pages, and then there's a
Which is
bit of an
fine
ending.
because they deserve to be hated.
Well, this
Well,
is true.
no,
But it
that's not
doesn't
my
necessarily
problem
make
with
for
it.
a
It's
good
just-
story.
It's not
No, it
like
doesn't
it's not
necessarily make for a good
interesting.
story.
It's
Yeah.
not interesting. Bush or Cheney hating.
Yeah,
You know?
Here's
I
the
agree
thing,
with
though.
you.
When you're Stephen King and you write as prolifically as
I don't
he has
mind
done
his,
over the
his, like,
years,
political.
so much of
views.
what he publishes isn't
Yeah.
going to be for everybody because
Yeah.
he isn't a horror writer. That always bothers me. Stephen King, because it's October. No, he doesn't write just horror. He writes extensively and broadly across a lot of different subjects.
Yeah.
All of it is imaginative. Very little of it is set in reality. So it kind of gets dumped in fantasy or horror, but it's not horror. It is incredibly broad. And because of that, they don't always land.
It's
And you
reference
get
to George
love
W. Bush,
other
the
people.
44th president of the United States of America. He was
And-
not very well. He was basically the Trump of his time, and then the Republican Party was like, "Hold our beer," and then Trump got in, and everyone was like, "What the fuck?"
Stephen King has written a lot of political motivated stories, and he's written a lot that aren't. And his audience is so vast, you're going to get hugely differing opinions as to which
Yes.
ones are good and which ones are bad. So it's the ones that intersect the most that are the most successful, are the most popular. And they tend to be It and The Stand. And you get a lot of love for Pet Sematary because it does make for a great spooky read. But
It's his
those
best horror
are
novel,
the
I
few
think.
that
Yeah.
overlap. And they're a bit horror, but they're a bit psychological. And he's done them well.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of either extreme with Stephen
yeah.
King, and that's why you can get people who have read one of the extreme texts and hated it and have never gone back, even though there might be another book out there that they
Like
would love.
I would say, like Bad King is like Dreamcatcher, the Tommy Knockers, and like Under the Dome.
Oh,
And
everybody
there's
agrees
probably
Tommy Knockers is
There's
dreadful.
probably some other ones I'm forgetting to mention.
It's even one of the worst Blind Guardian songs.
Oh, really?
If Blind Guardian made a song
hilarious.
about Tommy Knockers, then it's not a good song.
I'm trying to think who it was. Somebody, it might be Jake Bishop. It was Jake Bishop because I was part of a readathon last year, and to get points for the readathon, you had to do a review. And Jake Bishop read the Tommy Knockers, and I nearly cried laughing at his review for that on Goodreads because he was like, "I'm only giving it a star because I have to give it a star to write a review." And his
Yeah.
review is just hilarious
Mm.
about how terrible
Yeah.
the Tommy Knockers is.
Good luck,
And it's
Darnall.
just glorious.
Yeah.
It's-
And I thought,
But-
yeah.
Oh, it is hilariously bad.
Because
Like
it's-
even
it is
King
a
was like, "This book is terrible."
drug-induced
Like I
trip.
can't even bullshit about this. Like
I'm
it was
not.
bad.
I'm not a big Stephen King fan, but I have noticed that the Tommy Knockers, as far as I've experienced so far, is universally hated.
It's
Even
King
just
doesn't
I
like
haven't
it.
run into anybody who has said, "No, it's
No.
all right." You know, everyone's like, "No,
it's
it's
just
garbage.
not.
It's really bad."
it's
Yeah.
hot garbage.
Yeah.
in so many ways.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, I mean, like I think I think like the main thing with King for me is like The Gunslinger is the one book where Stephen King actually tried to use interesting words,
okay.
and a lot of people hated
He
for
was
that. But that's
16.
the kind of thing that, like, as a reader, I like authors that do interesting stuff with words. And King normally
You like
doesn't do that. He
evocative
tells
prose.
stories. Like, I'll gladly listen to Stephen King tell me
Mm.
this story. I don't need to read a book for that.
No, fair enough.
Certainly, most of his work, he is very consciously writing in pretty plain language.
It's
Like,
very
you don't
plain.
read,
It's very
you don't read
accessible.
King for prose,
Yeah,
you know. And if there's any interesting words in The Gunslinger, it's because he was a pretentious 16-year-old.
That's right.
I totally get
wrote
that,
it.
and we can talk about like whether he was trying too hard, but at least he was
Again, it
trying
comes back
for
to what you
once.
said, Raph,
Sure.
is knowing at what point the
I'd
story
rather
was
s-
written.
I'd-
Where
yeah,
in
I'd-
his writing
I
did it happen?
I really like. I'm someone definitely who really enjoys more complex and creative prose.
There's like
But
the
what I've
different
read
phases
of
King's
Stephen
career.
King, I get hooked on the story, even though the language is very, very straight and simple. I still
story's
get hooked on
engaging.
the stories he writes, you know, and the characters and their interactions and all of that stuff. And maybe I never think about the language while I'm reading it
No.
because there's not much in the prose itself to think about. But I still get into the
Yeah.
the
I find him really
action
engaging.
and the characters and relationships and you know, I find he writes really interesting stories. You know?
The Dark Tower is kind of a hard sell because on the one hand, like, it's such a weird beast. Like, it's kind of like Elric, where it's not really taking from any particular traditions of fantasy storytelling. It's just kind of doing its own thing. Now, I know there's probably going to be people who are like, oh, there's references to King Arthur and Lord of the Rings. Well, yeah, sure. But
There's
like,
references to everything.
well, yes,
But
that
Lord
too.
of the Rings and King Arthur stories are just taking from human history of storytelling. They're just using tropes that existed before then.
But the reason
they've
I like the
become the
Dark
touchstone.
Tower is it's again kind of like Elric or like, you know, the Baz Log books. It's just, I'm just gonna do whatever the hell I want, and you're just gonna like it. So
It's pretty different, even though it's pulling from, like, I mean, you could make a very long list of things he's directly referencing, things that no doubt inspired him, things that he stole from somewhere else. But as a whole, it feels like a pretty unique story. You know, it's doing some really strange stuff that I hadn't really seen most places before.
Yeah.
You know?
What I find so interesting is when you read The Gunslinger, and yes, you know, he was a pretentious 16-year-old, but the flashback stuff with the kid in New York, my God, was Stephen King an angry political writer at some point?
He remains so, and I think that's where
He
he
still- he
loses
still
some
brings that
fans, and where he keeps a lot of fans.
I think
It
you would
kind
like
of
Under the
disagree
Tower.
or
comes
agree
out,
with
but when
his-
you
Very angry and political book.
when you read the New York parts in The Gunslinger and you compare it to that 11 something whenever that guy that Catholic got shot book, he's suddenly
So
way more
bad.
mellow when it comes to America.
I just find him a really interesting author. I like the things that I've read from him that I like, and the things that I've read from him that I'm not a huge fan of.
Yeah.
I know why. I'm like, no, I didn't like a specific thing with this book, or this.
I think it's like-
it just wasn't me at the time. Whatever it was.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I've engaged well with Stephen King's works, and I don't know. I think that he gets written off as either overhyped or a horror writer when he's neither of those things. And
Also-
could somebody just grant the guy the credit that he writes really great ensemble casts, and he tells a bloody good story, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Also,
And he has
As a
a
person I would
tell your
love to hang
friends-
out with and have a conversation with.
Oh God,
I really
Crazy
appreciate
shit in that
him.
man's head.
I respect and appreciate Stephen King, the human being,
Mm.
with his like attitudes and all the stuff that he believes and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Most of his books just don't connect with me.
Yeah.
Also, tell your friend that she either did exactly the right thing or it was a really stupid decision. Because
Again, it's an extreme. They
the
love it or hate
It's
it.
a hell
the
of a journey.
Gunslinger is very different than all of the other books in the Dark Tower, no question. But if the thing she loved about the Gunslinger, like me, was the character of Roland, then she should keep reading. Because there's a lot more Roland, and he actually
if
has
she-
a character arc.
But if she really enjoyed the biblical allusions and the overblown language, then yeah,
Then
no,
then
don't.
that is not the
You know,
rest of the Dark
Good choice.
Tower.
I kind of like
The rest of the Dark
like,
Tower is, I mean, the funny thing about the Gunslinger is if you want to know the story, you only have to read the first line, and it's
Yeah.
just such an epic, awesome first line.
It
If
is.
you've read
I
the
know
first
the
line
first
of the
line, and I've never
Gunslinger,
read the book. Yeah.
that is the whole book, basically.
Yeah.
Like, well, 2/3 of the book.
It's so fascinating because I recently reread in my ongoing reading books that no one wants to talk about Ian MacDonald thing. I reread Desolation Road, and Desolation Road starts with, for 3 nights, Dr. Alimantando followed the green person across the desert, and I'm like, did you just?
Yeah. Gee, I wonder what inspired that piece. Yeah.
Well, I mean, after that, it goes into like really weird places because it is basically 100 Years of Solitude on Mars with Glenn Miller for reasons.
that book. Actually, I actually added that to my list because of you, Rap. That book sounds really cool. Like I want
It
to read
is
that.
absolutely like I've I have weird
When I
tastes in
read it,
books.
I will get you on my channel. We can talk about it.
I'm currently rereading all of these Ian MacDonald novels, and he's one of the most absolutely fascinating, brilliant science fiction writers that are still alive. In just like from like a cute, just like from a craft perspective, the way he does actually both use language and construct stories, and how like the references he pulls and how all of that stuff fits together is just like impressive to watch from the sidelines. Just go like, wow, this is someone who absolutely knows every fucking detail of what they're doing, and it's just like impressive from that perspective. Beyond that, he's also just like really cool and tackles interesting stories and stuff. But just
If
from
I
a craft perspective,
actually ever write any novels, they will all begin with X followed Y across the desert.
okay, yeah.
All of them. Just because that is such an epic line and it deserves to
It
be
is.
paid,
It is.
paid more.
My
homage.
friend Jason has that
I-
line framed on his wall.
Really?
I
I
am
like
also
that.
going to use this moment to call it for the evening.
All
Because
Yeah, I
right.
was
Vince
gonna
is
get something to
getting
eat. I haven't
more and more
eaten today.
aggressive, like starting at about 8:30 and it culminates at about 10, which is when she should be fed. She starts
Yes.
yelling at me and clawing at me and running around in circles around me and so on.
She's too big
And-
to have clawing at you.
no, she's not. And she's not a big fan of being picked up, as Ida noticed when I picked her
Yeah.
up
Yeah.
earlier. She was upside down.
She was like,
when I
"Oh,
first picked
don't
her
want
up.
to be here."
Yeah, she's not very cooperative when you pick her up. It has, as always, been a pleasure to have you all in the chat
And it's
and on
always a
screen.
pleasure
in
I
to
the
will
have
Sunday
you.
most
Pub.
like. I should note, Matt, I will most likely not be here next week because I will be in Florida. Well, actually,
Okay,
heading back.
everybody, Sunday Pub next week's cancelled. Britain can't make it.
Because
Well, no, you guys go without me.
Oh, okay.
oh, we
Yeah,
have
then
permission
we
to
will.
continue.
Then we
Okay.
will.
All right.
Okay.
I'll,
I
I'll-
appreciate
I'll-
it, Britain. Thank you.
I'll better get on that bus to go to Poland and talk about the Situationist International and the Leaderless Revolution.
Wave when you
Okay.
go through Berlin. I'll
I
be
will
thinking of
wave
you
when
at
I-
7 in the morning.
I have 2 hours at SOP. I will wave enthusiastically into the
Yeah.
nothingness.
Into the direction of the southwest direction.
There you
And then
go.
Matt
Right.
will wake up and just sense it. He was like, "He was
Exactly.
here."
You felt
Yeah,
it through
exactly.
the void.
Berlin will never
I'll
be
send,
the same.
I'll send you a
Raph will
picture of me waving to the southwest at SOP
Perfect.
at 7 in the morning.
All right,
I-
everybody.
I look forward
Have
to it.
lovely days. Or
Have
Right,
an excellent
Those of
week,
you who are in the
everyone,
past.
and see you next week
Next week.
in the pub. Good night. Good afternoon.
You know,